The opinions expressed in this program are not those of CISA 7 or Time Warner Cable.
What's your tomorrow?
Call the board meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Then I'd ask Mr. Dorf to please read the mission statement.
We educate all students to be college, career, and community ready, inspired to succeed in our diverse world.
Thank you. Next is our open forum. This is a chance for members of the community to speak before the board on any topic that they wish. And I will call forward in order that the forms were submitted. And first I have the members of the Club Italo-Americano of Green Bay.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Buonasera.
Buonasera, benvenuti.
Grazie.
Prego.
My name is Lawrence Teofilo. I'm the president of Club Italo-Americano, better known as the Italian-American Club of the Greater Green Bay area. With me is Lynn Thompson, who's a board member, and back there with the camera is Lisa Iapalucci, who's also a board member. Lynn is also our liaison between the club and the Italian language class and the school district in Green Bay, and I'll let her tell you about why we're here.
Okay. Thanks. I wrote it out because I get long-winded otherwise. I'm a retired foreign language and second language teacher, and still I'm very active in several countries of the world with this, and so I feel like I can be a good support to the program behind the scenes as well. But the main mission of both the club, our club here in Green Bay, which is Club Italo-Americano, and the Wisitalia, which is the organization, the state level organization, is to promote the Italian language and culture in our area. A valuable goal in our global society, you'll agree. In accordance with this mission, both organizations have been happy to offer support for support of the Green Bay Schools Italian language program since its inception in 2008. Throughout this time, Wisitalia, the state-level organization, has provided funds of over $12,000, including startup and annual amounts for materials, in addition to other amounts for teacher certification. Our local organization has involved high school Italian students in our frequent cultural events, and our members have made numerous presentations to the high school classes. We are also fortunate to have had such great teachers in the program, in the Green Bay Schools program, who bring much authentic personal experience, having lived for extensive time periods in Italy and being passionate and knowledgeable about Italian, not only the language but the culture. It's very important. It is my great pleasure on behalf of both Italian organizations to present a check for $1,000 from Wisitalia to this board earmarked for the Italian language program. And I thank you all for welcoming us to your meeting tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for your generosity over the years. I think Chris wants to say something too.
Yes, I do want to point out that the club was instrumental in getting Italian classes into our school district. They worked in a very positive way with myself when I was at Preble. Speaking from personal standpoint, full disclosure, I'm a member of the club and was a previous board member, so one would argue I have a best interest in that. But in any event, they've been a delightful group to work with. Their mission is a good one, and we're happy to have them as a partner. So if you'd like to present the check to us in the front here.
Okay.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for all you do.
Oh, another one?
Another picture. Chris, get back there.
She wants to make sure our eyes were open, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And pass it along to the rest of your members, our appreciation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Before I leave, I'd like to introduce Lori Stimson, who is the teacher of Italian language in the district. She just arrived back from Milwaukee. So.
All right, then we have 3 more speakers for our open forum. First, I'll call on Dawn Kraft.
Hi. Do I need to spell
If you
my
could,
name?
yeah, well, say your name, we have it here, but, and also your name and address.
Okay.
You don't have to spell.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dawn Kraft. My address is 2040 Farland Avenue in Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54302. I'm here today to talk to you about an advocacy group that I formed along with several other members of our community for Green Bay Public School System. A little bit about myself first, though. I'm a parent of 4 sons that attend Green Bay area public schools, and so I have a lot invested in education. I'm also a product of the Green Bay school system, and education has always been a large passion of mine. However, I'm not a teacher. I'm an IT worker, a server analyst at a Wisconsin Energy Corporation, also known as Wisconsin Public Service. But I'm here today to tell you about our group. I guess last year I became very concerned, about our public schools during our budget and all of the policy changes that was impacting with our state budget. And so I had a lot of questions too, and I got together with some friends and met a few people in our community, and we went down to Appleton and met with the group, the Fox Cities Advocates for Public Education, and decided to form a group like that in Green Bay, just to kind of promote awareness and promote public schools. We are an independent, grassroots, nonpartisan citizens advocacy group that supports public education in our local communities and also throughout Wisconsin and throughout our nation. A few things that we advocate for are we believe in and advocate for public schools because we're a public school education group, but also we believe that they're the cornerstone of democracy. We also believe in neighborhood schools as the center of our communities. We also believe and advocate for local control, as well as using the public tax dollars to fully fund public schools as written in the Constitution, in our state's Wisconsin Constitution. One of our first actions that we're doing as an advocacy group is we're joining the Fox Cities Advocacy for Public Education group and showing a movie around Green Bay and the surrounding area. The movie is called Education, Inc. It's a documentary that examines the for-profit motives that are often at play in the push for education reform. It's including the privatizing of public education under the guise of school choice. The documentary, it's the director of the movie. He tells a story as in his own situation as a local parent in Douglas County, Colorado, and it's kind of his story as he's kind of waking up to the impact that larger forces of business and also politics have in his own school system. The first movie that we're showing is going to be February 10th at the University of Wisconsin, and we're just trying to make awareness and inviting the board members to come see the movie with us if they're interested. And I brought a few posters for reminders. I can leave them up by the coffee or something. But then also not only watch the movie with us, and then also stay afterwards for discussion if interested. We're just going to have a question and answer session if any people who watch the movie are interested in our group specifically, and also any of the documentary and how it kind of relates to us locally. So, thank you.
You said that it was on February 10th at UWGB?
Yep, at Christie Theater.
Christie Theater, okay. What time?
7 p.m.
All right, thanks.
And it's one of the first showings. The next one we're going to have is at the Crest Theater, the Crest De Pere Library, February 20th, but we'll have more information about that coming.
Will that likely be at 7 too?
I think that might be at 6.
Okay, but evening.
Yep, in the evening, yeah. And in the Fox Cities, they've played the movie 6 different times already in local or different venues in Appleton, I think Menasha, I think a lot of the local libraries. So we're going to be trying to play it, I guess, this coming spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I ask you to...
It goes to Sandy Heller right
yeah,
there.
The information to her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Lowline, did I say that right? Oh, I did all right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ken Lowline, and I live at 2266 Sunrise Court in Green Bay, 54302. I have a son and a daughter, both of whom graduated from Preble High School, and a stepson who graduated from Green Bay West. I'm here as a concerned citizen tonight, and I'm also a member of Green Bay Advocates for Public Education. Some of my initial remarks is informational, and you're probably all familiar with it already, so bear with me. Hopefully it'll just set up my comments toward the end of my talk. Voucher programs began in the state of Wisconsin in 1990 with the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program. Vouchers were expanded to Racine with the Racine Parental Choice Program, and the statewide program began in the 2013-2014 school year. Testing results released by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction show that Milwaukee voucher students do not perform any better than public school students in reading and math. This is true when comparing similar socioeconomic groups. My question then is, why has the voucher program been expanded statewide if this is the case? Early data from the statewide program shows that the state is subsidizing many families who are already sending their children to private and parochial schools. In fact, nearly 75% were already attending these schools. I feel that this is less about school choice and more about taking money away from public schools. At a time when there have been dramatic cuts in the state budget for K through 12 education, vouchers are bleeding critical funding from school districts, especially low-income school districts. The expansion of independent charter and for-profit schools will only aggravate the situation. Without considering the cost of charter and for-profit schools, the Legislative Fiscal Bureau estimates that voucher expansion over the next 10 years will cost the state $600 to $800 million. The budget moves away from a model of democratically elected school boards and accountable community schools to private, parochial, independent charter, and for-profit schools that operate under different rules. If you want to know the basics, such as your voucher schools, graduation, dropout, and expulsion rates, good luck. Let's not wait until our public schools are on life support, then it will be too late. This school board and other school boards around the state need to work in partnership with concerned citizens and teachers to address this situation. We need to be proactive and encourage our legislators to end this threat to our public schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Catherine Carley.
Hello. I just wanted to clarify quickly, the second showing of that Education Inc. film is February 25th at 6 p.m. at the Kress Library. So, hi everyone, my name is Catherine Carley. I live at 3713 South Clay Street in Green Bay. I'm the parent of a student at Aldo Leopold Community School and also a member of this newly formed group, Green Bay Advocates for Public Education. Last May, Ms. Warren, you said that you and this board could maybe hold a press conference in the hopes to better educate the local public, especially parents, about the impact that vouchers were having. So I'd like to know today what this school board and members of the school district have done to fight back against what everyone in this room clearly knows is a very well-coordinated attack against our public school teachers and our schools. Has the Green Bay School Board even composed a public statement or a resolution rebuking the voucher system? Or a statement rebuking the actions to restrict when this school board could take a referendum to the voters, as other school boards and superintendents have done across the state? The Eau Claire School Board has made such a statement. Whitewater, Racine, Portage, Altoona. What has been the response from the Green Bay School Board, which serves the third largest urban school district in the state? Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but from a parent's perspective, it seems as if the answer is not much. What has the head of special education for the Green Bay School District said or done, if anything, to denounce special education vouchers? More than $1 million was siphoned from our public school district to pay for these private school vouchers. Yet late last year, lawmakers with the State Urban Education Task Force heard more than 6 hours of testimony from our superintendent, our school board president, and others about the amazing programs taking place in our school. I sat through all 6 hours of testimony, and not once did I hear one official challenge these lawmakers. These lawmakers have proven to you time and time again that they do not care about the great work taking place in our schools. They already know the levels of poverty that our district is dealing with. They have shown you repeatedly through legislative action that they don't care, that they are determined to deplete our public school budgets and continue the falsehood that our public schools are failing in order to achieve the complete privatization of the public school system. I believe the members of the school board know this. I think anybody working in public education in the state of Wisconsin would know this by now. If you think that you are taking the high ground with these lawmakers by not even mentioning the impact that these policies will have on our teachers and our schools, I don't think you accomplish anything. So I came here today because I just wanted to ask you, what is it that you're waiting for? When are you going to take a stand? Because your inaction and your inability to take that stand shows weakness, in my opinion, and it shows fear, and it displays a lack of leadership. I want to tell you that parents in this district and the school board should be a united front against the anti-public education forces that are already causing such hardship for public school teachers and schools in the Milwaukee area. Because I think we all know that that front will eventually make its way to Green Bay. And I want to ask you tonight to just be bold, to do something and take a public stand. Parents want to work with you, but we want leadership from our school board and from our district officials. And I just have to ask you, when will you do that? Because it's now or never, in my opinion. Thank you.
All right. We can't talk about this at our meeting because it's not posted, so we are not legally allowed to engage in conversation with you at open forums, unfortunately. So we'll have to get back to you at another time.
Can you let us know if you did write a public statement or some type of resolution?
Yeah. I'm just don't want you to leave the table thinking that we aren't saying anything, and just so you know, the procedure. So.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
If I may add to that, perhaps somebody could meet with this lady to fill her in on what has been done. And every board meeting, something's been said. So I guess we also, from where I'm sitting, a lot's been done. Somehow we haven't communicated that to the internal public. If she's not seeing it.
She can't hear.
She can't hear you, but we can't really
That's
enter
okay.
into
Yeah.
this debate.
Okay, we'll follow up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, that concludes our open forum, unless there's anyone else who would like to speak before the board this evening. Seeing none, we will move to our roll call.
Jeffries?
Here.
Ford?
Here.
Warren?
Here.
Whitehead?
Here.
Blackham?
Here.
Here.
Becker?
Excused.
Martinez Cruz? Here. Sinclair?
All right, we have 6 board members present tonight, 1 excused. Also at the table to my left is Dr. Michelle Langenfeld, our superintendent. We have 2 Intercity Student Council members, Luli Martinez Cruz, who's usually here, president of the Intercity City Council from East, and Grace Sinclair from Preble. And also at the table is Sandy Heller, our board executive assistant. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the following minutes. Regular board meeting, December 14th. Special board meeting, December 15th. Special board meetings closed sessions, December 14th, January 5th, January 11th, and January 12th, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes have been approved. We have no communications to be placed on file, so we'll move next to our monitoring reports, and that'll be facilitated by Celestine Jeffries.
Thank you, President Brenda. So I have the immense pleasure of introducing Mark Smith and Diane Dersch about an extremely hot and long-coming topic, the data warehouse. So before we begin, though, the data warehouse, since this is televised, it may sound a little dry, but this is very important information for us to do our job, for staff members to do their job, to have information about students, for the school board to be able to do our job, for the superintendent and the senior staff. We need to have information. Many members of the public know that information is like gold these days, platinum even. And we have been waiting patiently for the school district to have an ability to put all the information into essentially one place called the data warehouse. I would also like to say, to compliment you all on the PowerPoint, lots of pictures. PowerPoint's supposed to, there's some words, but very short. PowerPoint's supposed to be very visual, so this is good. I like this. Okay. Take it away. Diane, our Chief Information Technology Officer, and Mark Smith, our Assistant Superintendent.
Before we begin, I'd like to offer Dr. Langenfeld a little bit of context-setting opportunity because, as you mentioned, this has been a journey, and it's an exciting journey, so go ahead.
It has truly been a journey in and of itself. I think as we talk about a data warehouse, it is a place where we will keep all key pieces of information. And you'll learn tonight the difference between a data warehouse and a data dashboard, which is a progress monitoring opportunity for teachers, for building principals, for central office folks, and the Board of Education, and hopefully eventually the public will be able to also have opportunity for the data dashboard. I think one of the things that I really appreciate is you'll learn about the data dashboard, but it is the journey also in terms of cost savings and efficiencies that our Chief Technology and Information Officer, Diane Dersch, was able to work with the state of Wisconsin through their technology folks and really start to build a consortium around data warehouses. They are extremely costly, and to be able to leverage that so that we can get some significantly lower rates. That's been part of the go slow to go fast to do this, and maybe Diana, when you share your part, to just speak of the difference in cost savings for the taxpayers, but also wanting to ensure that the product that we have is quality so that we'll be able to not only leverage the work that we're trying to do internally, but we see this as an opportunity as we work to address the needs and supports of Achieve Brown County, where we will have an information system where all of the school districts in Brown County in public education will be able to share their data and be able to see how we as a county are doing as well. So a lot of opportunity around innovative practices with this. A lot of good work done. Thank you both, and a lot more good work to do. So turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the context setting and the introduction. A lot of pressure on tonight's presentation, so hopefully we can deliver. In all seriousness, the objective for tonight's presentation is to, again, build that collective understanding around what a data warehouse is, to walk you through our journey to get to this point, but then also to lay the next steps around what we still have to accomplish yet. We've come a long way, but we certainly have not arrived totally, and that's okay, because there is a lot to learn in the process, and we've learned a tremendous amount just to get to the point that we're at right now. So in full disclaimer, we will provide you some visuals this evening around some of the features and elements of what a data warehouse will look like. However, the disclaimer is that this is not our student information. We are not unveiling any specific individual identifiable or broken down data. This is a dummy screenshot that you'll see, so I just wanted to put that out there. We're not going to go live and allow you to see that information. We're still working on some of the data privacy pieces. We're still identifying some of the customizable dashboards and what principals would view, so I wanted to put that out there for the general public, but also for the Board of Education as well. So one of the first steps is really looking at differentiating between a data warehouse and a data dashboard. And we have something similar, and we've been using Infinite Campus, our student information system, similarly to a data warehouse. And a data warehouse, for our purposes and in the Green Bay Area School District, is really a comprehensive collection of data. So where we store the information to be accessed, to be drilled down to be able to mine. Unfortunately, with the student information system, we rely on the technical end to write some customizable reports. So our programmers oftentimes have to write the reports to pull the information to allow the end user to make sense of that information. It's a very difficult and tiresome process, and includes a lot of folks. So a warehouse is really that collection of the comprehensive data set. A dashboard is that ability, as Dr. Langenfeld mentioned, to be able to put things that we value in front of the stakeholders, and it really identifies what you value and what are the things that you're going to continue to monitor on a regular, ongoing process. So for us, using the dashboard analogy is a really good learning tool for us. As you think about the car dashboard, there are certain things on that dashboard, just like in our organization, that allow us to identify some of the key areas to monitor. So for me, I want to make sure that I got enough gas in my gas tank so I can get to where I'm going. I also want to make sure that my battery is fully charged and I'm not going to have to run out of battery. It also allows me to identify things real time. And if you look at the visual that we have right there, there are warning lights that come on. There's the door. If your door is not completely shut, it flashes and it gives us an indication that we want to more closely look at a particular area. And so when we use the dashboard and we create customized dashboards, we're going to start to look at what do our stakeholders need in order to meet the needs of the students. So we start to then differentiate it by levels. And what a teacher would need in order to meet the needs of the students might look a little bit different than what a principal would need to meet the needs of all of their teachers within the building. Likewise, an instructional leadership team may want to look at different sorts of data to be able to look at programmatic things, or they may want to be looking at grade levels. As an assistant superintendent, one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is transitional opportunities. So I may want to drill down to the transition from 5th grade to 6th grade, and also from 8th grade to 9th grade, and likewise 12th grade into college and beyond. So by getting us customizable data dashboards, it allows different members within the organization to monitor things that are really pertinent and valuable to their position. Ultimately, we want to be able to make whatever decisions we can to meet the needs of the students, because at the end of the day, that's our primary goal. I would also offer, as alluded, that this has been a journey. It's been a technical journey, and it's also been a journey of continuous improvement. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Diane, and she'll give you a brief overview around the technical journey to get to this point, and then we'll get into the specific elements or features of our school and our district data warehouse.
Well, the moment is here, right? We've been waiting for this. I've heard about this even before I got my job here in Green Bay. Can you help us get a data warehouse? You've talked about wanting a data warehouse for 10 years or so. And so I'm very pleased to be sitting in front of you today with a team who I know is going to optimize the resources that we have in front of us today. I just want to back up in time a bit to tell you how we got to where we are right now. As I had talked about before, in summer of 2013, there was a time when Dr. Langenfeld, Kim Paulo, Mark Smith talked with technology consultant Patrick Plant, as well as the Department of Public Instruction. How might we optimize and work together so that we can have a data a warehouse that is helpful not only to us, but potentially others within the state of Wisconsin. Okay, and so when I came aboard, wheels had already started turning regarding a concept. So when I started my job in the summer of 2013, I had a lot to learn, of course, but you know, it was I hit the ground running regarding what the needs of Green Bay area public schools were regarding a data warehouse. And we knew that WiseDash Secure was already out there being used. We knew that WINS, which is kind of a part of this, was available. And so it really made sense to continue to work with the company that provides those interfaces for a more real-time interface. For instance, when you go to WiseDash Secure, you have to be you know, a school official to be able to do that, and it's not real-time data. It's tests that were given a while ago. So it just gives you a very broad dipstick of things. And so, you know, the real need to see real-time data was important. And Dr. Langenfeld, having worked in a school district who had that, realized and knew the importance of that. And so it was, you know, during that time then when I was able to have a conversation with other leaders of technology in other school districts, and we talked about how might we work together to make this happen. Because for an individual school district to go forth and do this costs a lot of money. In fact, even if you're the smallest school district wanting to do this, it might even be out of your range, because there are hardware costs and there are software costs, and that we're not even talking about a population of students yet. And every school district has to go through this. So we really thought if we could pool our resources together and share hardware costs, share licensing costs, that we could save money. In fact, the average for a school district is about $425,000 ongoing every year to have a data warehouse. Okay, we were able to get the cost down to $72,000 for Green Bay area public schools yearly. Okay, that's significant savings. Now, the more schools that we have join our consortium, the less we have to pay. And our ultimate goal is to get down to about $1 a student, which really is wonderful for all our students of Green Bay, or of Wisconsin, because everybody would be afforded the same type of resource available to them to monitor learning. And so we work together with our CISAs, and actually CISA 12, which is way up north, serves as our fiscal agent, and we have a consortium now. There were 5 school districts who initially joined. It's so interesting because they all have 2 names: Green Bay, Monona Grove, Sun Prairie, Muskego, Norway, Kettle Moraine. Those folks are my colleagues. We work together with CISA 12 to write governance agreements, procedures, policy, data security. It was more than 1 meeting a month for sure. In the operations board, there were work teams alongside that as we worked to put things together. And then the time came, as we talked about the hardware and the software and made those types of negotiations, that we were able to start data mapping, meaning that Wise Local, the VersaFit company, came to Green Bay Area Public Schools, met with our data team. We took a look at all the Infinite Campus fields, and there are thousands of them, and had to map them to what in Wise-Local would that equal. Because not only Infinite Campus school districts are able to use this, but Power School districts as their student information system, as well as Skyward districts were able to use this. And so at this point, we've got 16 different school districts throughout the state of Wisconsin who are currently using Wise-Local. We've spent a lot of time on data sharing agreements. As a consumer, I work a lot with vendors on taking a look at their contracts. With the help of legal counsel, Lissa Thiel-Collar, we've evolved tremendously regarding taking a look at student data security, taking a look at when we cease working with a company, what happens to the data, because it should be coming back. We've got 12 model terms that we follow for all these contracts. Well, the tables were turned this time, right? Because I have been a consumer up to this point, but Wise-Local is a consortium which is offering a service, so we in turn were a vendor. And so when we looked at all these different experiences that we had with student privacy agreements, data sharing, and the fuzzy language that we've been presented with from a lot of our vendors, we thought, no, we can do better than that. So we spent a lot of time between last year, between May and December, and working on student data privacy agreements. And that really took a lot of work and effort. In fact, in our research, we found that consortia throughout the United States did not have clear and concise agreements like we were hoping to have. And so we wrote this from the ground up without having a lot of models before us. In fact, everybody we talked to said, oh, we should really work on that, you know? So here we are. We worked on those data sharing agreements. We got all those things in place, and we now have, live assessment data in our data warehouse as well, and that is very dynamic. So if a student takes a STAR test yesterday, it will appear in our data warehouse today. Okay, and so that's kind of the timeline of the techie stuff that it took to get to this point. And so now Mark and I are working together with what we call our core team. And those are the folks, the data team, as well as the teaching and learning team that are going to help move us forward.
Perfect. And so that becomes the transition to really making a warehouse come alive. And we see this as a critical tool in the school improvement process. It's giving the principals and the people at the building level the necessary information, as Diane said, real time to drill down so that they can make decisions on behalf of students. So it becomes upon us, our responsibility to ensure that, one, the system is working, it's as dynamic as we want it to be, it's as customizable as the user needs it to be, and then also the professional learning that goes along with it. With access to the data comes a responsibility to make good, informed decisions on behalf of the students and the school. So as Diane mentioned, that really is where we're at right now with the core team. The ultimate goal of being able to allow teams and principals to use the data warehouse when they begin the planning for next year, which would be at the end of this spring. Because as you know, with the school improvement process, our teams are starting to already analyze data and get prepared for the following year, the second semester. So I'll go ahead and share with you some of the features of what the data warehouse allows us to do. Remember, within the context that we're still looking at customizing some of the dashboard features, but we do know from a larger picture standpoint, the data warehouse allows us to be able to identify key district statistics. It allows us to monitor attendance on a weekly basis, a daily basis for that matter. It allows us to drill down to grades or marks by semester or by quarter. It also allows us to be able to look at behavior data based upon office referrals. It allows us to be able to monitor things from an enrollment standpoint across buildings, across grade levels. So as we get ready for staffing decisions as it comes to next year, we'll be able to drill down to enrollment. We'll be able to move enrollment forward for the year. And those are some of the features. This is what it can look like. We tried to blow it up for you so that you could see it a little bit and the folks in the audience could see that as well. If you could picture this as a dynamic tool so that if you were to click on, for example, the school, and remember again, this is just a screenshot of a tutorial. So if we were to identify Elm Park Middle, that's not one of our schools, but you could click on that and then that would bring up all of that data live for us to be able to monitor. We could also do it by grade level. As you see here, there's a filtering system there. You could break it down by ethnicity, gender. You could identify and really get into breaking down by groups of students, whether it's special ed or poverty, free and reduced. So there's a lot of mechanisms. And then it allows us to visually display the data. One of the things in my estimation is we attempt to really drill down to the data, but what we don't want is we don't want data fatigue. We want to be able to look at the high leverage data indicators and really call them out for what they are, leading indicators versus lagging, and so we really want to be precise with that.
Mark, if I may as well, let me tell you about the old way this was done. We have programmers and our teaching and learning folk or people who have these questions, our education folk would go to our programmers and say, could you write me a report on, and then they would give all these data sets that they wanted. So the programmer would do that and extract a report, and the person who asked the question would get a sheet of numbers. That was it. And so there were no visual representations. Well, we know as we get more data, it causes us to ask more questions, right? And so then the asker of questions has to come up with more specific questions, go back to a programmer, ask for a report to be created, and run another report. So this allows for that dynamic inquiry in real time. And that is huge. It's a time saver all the way around.
So I'd also just point out, remember, we're starting big picture. This is more of that district data picture, but you can break it down by administration, principal, teachers, and even drill down into assessments. So I'll take you through now, if the funnel is here, we're going to start to funnel it down into some more specific data opportunities. We have the ability to analyze data. So you can drill down to the student level and actually click on Mark Smith, and then that would display my portfolio of assessments or indicators. We also have the ability to really drill down by demographics, subgroup analysis, we often refer to it as. So a few of the examples: ethnicity by grade, mobility, current year to date. So what does mobility look like at X school or particular grade level? Ethnicity I mentioned, and also enrollment. So I'll show you the visual of some of those features as well. Again, you see the numerical representation, and in this example, 37,000, again, from a district perspective, 37,000 students, but then you can start to break it down by subgroup and do a deeper analysis. The screenshot didn't capture, but currently enrolled students, you could identify by school what is your ongoing current enrollment real point in time. So as we try to track staffing additions midway through the year, this might be a good tool for us to look at and to drill down to as well. It provides the principals an opportunity to monitor real time as well. I'll share with you just one more visual, and then we'll wrap up and open it up to questions. As I mentioned, ultimately the goal of a data warehouse is to allow us to be able to identify what individual students need. I mean, that ultimately is our goal. When we use data, we want to get to the point where we're talking about individual students and making decisions on behalf of those students. That's a goal that we have in the organization. We hope to be flexible and nimble to be able to do that and responsive to meet the needs of the students. So as you see in this next one, we can look at subject analysis. So as we enter in assessment data, and maybe it's common summative assessment, or maybe it's common formative assessment, or it's how they did on their final exam, whatever that assessment might be, we would be able to then break down that data and allow the teacher then to be able to make the decisions around how did my instructional practice work for that student, and what things do I need to do differently as I move forward in working with our students. So you see here another visual representation of what that might look like. This is an example of a map assessment, and then it's showing over the course of this particular distribution how the students did. It allows you to then also, once you click on the school, you would see individual students, and then you could click down by student as well to see how the students performed.
Let me just, before you finish, let's just clarify. When you say you mean someone who had access.
Yeah.
Not just anyone in the
Correct.
room.
Correct. Yep, correct. And that gets back to this visual here. Our primary users are going to be administration, and that would be likely central office administration, principals, teachers, and then you would be able to, again, differentiate between a warehouse, that storehouse of data, and then the dashboard. And that's the part that we're at right now, is really looking at how do you customize the dashboards based upon the user group and what they need to be able to make the decisions around a continuous improvement process. So in wrap up, I'll share with you that our work continues. We're excited about it. As Diane mentioned, we've started with a core team. We're now at the point of identifying key principal leaders and teacher leaders to bring in to start to identify what features become really relevant for them as they make decisions on behalf of their students in the school, and that will result in customizable dashboards. Within the context of what we can customize, obviously. It also helps us identify key district measures that we want to continue to not only value but monitor on an ongoing process. So I envision a conversation as we get into data as a board and as a district administrative team, identifying some of those key measurements. I also mentioned that we need to develop and implement a professional learning plan. This is an opportunity for us to really improve and increase our assessment literacy, our knowledge of assessment, and how we use that to make decisions. The other piece, which is opportunistic and yet not overwhelming but challenging, is how do other systems pour into the data warehouse? For example, we have ASOP, which is our attendance system for teachers or employees. So people enter ASOP their absence. Or their leave, whatever they're out for. We have the ability to take systems like ASOP and enter it into the data warehouse, and then to be able to see how that then impacts decisions that we make as well. And there are other systems. My Learning Plan, for example, is our software that allows us to track professional learning that our staff attend, and we have that all accounted for in My Learning Plan. So how do you integrate other software systems within the data warehouse in a meaningful way that allows us to cross-reference and drill down and really analyze the data and make good informed decisions? Ultimately, all of that will result in activating the warehouse on behalf of our continuous school improvement process. So I know that was a lot, drinking from the fire hose a little bit. There's a lot to offer. There's still a lot of work to go through. So open it up for questions or any other context that folks would have.
Okay, questions? Chris?
Thank you. I had to pinch myself a couple of times during your presentation to see that I was actually here and hearing this after all these years. Let me just repeat what I think I've heard here, at least part of it. You do have the data warehouse in terms of all the data there and being collected and put into that warehouse on sounds like a daily basis, right? And second thing, I'm not sure on this, who has access to that right now? Is it live for the principals, staff down here, teachers for their classroom? And if not, when will it be?
Yep. So yes, you're correct. Any information that is in Infinite Campus right now, which is our student information system, is in the WISE-Local, the data warehouse. Yes. The folks that have access, to my knowledge, are the folks that are part of the core team that are looking at identifying how we start to activate a professional learning plan and how it can start to become customizable. We will start to bring in additional leaders, administrative leaders, building principals as an example, to more carefully fine-tune what that looks like. The goal ultimately is that administrators and in my opinion, folks that sit on an instructional or a building leadership team would have access to that by their employee group. So a teacher is going to be able to see things that we believe are important for a teacher. An administrator would have different rights than a teacher, if that makes sense, based upon their work responsibilities. And the goal is for all of that information to be up and going when we start our kickoff to the planning for next year, which is generally around May and June as they start to meet with their school leadership teams. Does that answer your question?
Again, I'll repeat it so I understand it. Right now, you have the car, but the people don't have the manual on how to run it yet, okay?
Not everybody.
And that will be by May.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
And it's not to keep it from them, it's to make sure that we have all of the imperfections worked out, and that we can also at the same time build a professional learning plan to go with that as well.
What do you foresee being what the board members will be able to see? Is that something that we're going to have conversation about, or is there standards for what boards get, have access to and things like that? Because obviously we're up with I would think the central office administrators maybe, but I don't know.
I defer to Dr. Langenfeld to provide that, but I think it's definitely a conversation that we have to have.
Yeah, and we're going to schedule a data retreat,
and
then
part of that?
we'll
Okay.
talk about what data sets are appropriate that you want to see.
Right.
I think that, the granularity of an individual student is typically not what a board would be interested in, but they might be interested in monitoring special education referrals, and they might be interested in monitoring, obviously, graduation rates, ACTs, but there are far, far, far more data sets to look at, and you determine what makes the best sense as the governance
And I think, and again, we have to internally differentiate the difference between a dashboard and a warehouse.
Correct.
And so access to a dashboard is likely different than access to a warehouse. So what are those things that go on a dashboard for? And this is down the road, but we talk about what's the dashboard for the public, for the community that we report out. And those, again, are conversations with the board to talk about what are those key district measurements. And certainly that interface with Achieve Brown County and some of those things that are coming before us as well are topics to be discussed.
Diane, I wonder if you would talk a little bit more about the fact that this would allow for a greater level of dynamic inquiry. That really piqued my interest. I know in the past that I've asked for any number of reports that have probably driven people crazy. So can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Sure. Could you go back to one of the assessment screens, perhaps? So dynamic inquiry, you would, probably take a look at this and say, okay, could you give me all female of a certain ethnic group, something like that. Talk to your programmer, have that report created for you and sent to you. Took a bit of time, right? With this, all we would do is select those different things through a filter, which you can do yourself, and then, as the educator, and then be able to drill down. So you don't have to go to anybody else and say, I'm looking for these pieces of information. It's a matter of what you allow yourself to filter through in order to get the information all the way down to, the student and their attendance and all those types of things that go with the demographic of a student. Now, that's something that, again, if you're to talk to a programmer, I want to see the achievement of, female Hispanic students, you wouldn't get right down to the students, and you might have to wait a bit or go to Infinite Campus to look up their attendance and those types of things, right? Or you might have to use multiple systems to get your answer. Well, here, you can just have those questions in your head and then be able to filter out that information to get to that information quickly without having to involve a programmer. So if you look at behind the scenes with us, this means that we can devote our time to other things regarding, time we would have spent on writing reports to other things, and then for the person making the inquiry, the answers are going to be there more, right then and there, as opposed to having to call somebody up to get that answer.
And then, Mark, a little bit more, if you would, on the integration of systems. I know we've got multiple systems where we're inputting data. So you mentioned a couple. Are there more that come to mind in terms of how things are going to be integrated?
Well, I think that one, our primary objective is to get the information in Infinite Campus. And we still have to write some things in terms of how do you prioritize different assessments to flow into WISE-Local. So that's the primary purpose initially. And then we actually just started talking about the integration of other systems. So it's a really early conversation. Those are the two that I can think about off the top of my head that we discussed. I'm trying to think of other.
Well, how about in terms of output? Various grants, programs require information and they require evaluations.
Sure.
Are we talking about an integration that allows for one place to go for all of that?
Yeah.
Head Start, for example.
It could.
Yes, because we could take, eventually HR data, absence data. We could take transportation data. That's why the warehouse is like the holder of all that stuff that allows you to make connections that we normally wouldn't have been able to make. Could we potentially find out how much a program costs? Wouldn't that be helpful?
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Thanks.
Other questions? I have a couple questions. So going back to what Ed was saying, and you had mentioned this before, because obviously a warehouse is, there's analogies abound, right? A warehouse is stacked with things. There's things in it, right? And so you're talking about Infinite Campus being a main supplier of this warehouse, and possibly ASUP being the main supplier of the warehouse, as well as standardized tests, both the ones that we kind of utilize, like the STAR assessment and MAPS, and then also the larger assessments like ACT and I can't remember, you gave us that great update about the
number of minutes for the test, and now I can't remember what it is. Is the Badger test or the forward test?
Right. Forward.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Right.
hard to keep track of.
It is really hard. Thank you for being my brain. So anything else that you see? Because when I hear about HR, I think, okay, is this a warehouse about how the teachers are doing? Is it a warehouse about how the students are doing and how the teachers are doing? That makes me a little curious, to be honest.
Well, I think that's good insight, and I would offer and certainly defer to Dr. Langenfeld. I think that's the conversation that can happen at a retreat that we are likely to have around what are those key district measurements, because I have colleagues and they're kind of a pack rat. They want to keep everything, and I don't like all the busyness. So what is the agreement as an organization around the data and the measurements that we value the most? And then, although they're in the warehouse, that doesn't necessarily mean that they all make the dashboard, or just because they're in there, we don't want that to take away from a focus around some key initiatives, because again, we could become fatigued, we can become overwhelmed by the access to that, and certainly not afraid of the data. I don't want to provide that misrepresentation, but I do believe that that's a valuable conversation.
Celestine, something that comes to mind for me when you bring up HR is looking at the efficacy of staffing that we have.
Right. Yeah.
If we're looking at X grades, test results, looking at the staffing that we've done there, I can see where there's an interface there.
I could see it. I guess I'm curious.
Yeah, and again, we really see this as an opportunity to continue to engage in that continuous improvement process. And if done well, it's not a I caught you. It's a process improvement. We continually monitor filling vacancies. I know that Jean in HR is really, we know that we want a first-class experience for our students in the classroom, and that means that if a teacher's out, how do we fill that vacancy? And are there trends that we're seeing emerged, and how do we then set up in terms of hiring subs in this particular area because of trends that we've been able to look at? That might be an example of something.
And now, I have questions. Go back to that slide. It's number 7 of 12. Ooh, that's fancy. Mine doesn't do that.
Is this the one?
No, 7 of 12.
7.
Nope. 7 of 12.
I don't have a number.
No, I don't.
It's the one where it's 55 schools, 2998 staff.
It's the attendance line graph.
Okay, yep, come there. This.
No.
Sorry. I didn't go far enough. I'm
It's the
sorry.
first
Yeah.
chart.
This is your first graph.
Dizzy.
Yeah.
There
we go.
That one.
Okay, so I have a couple questions there. And this is also, I was thinking about this as you were answering Ed's questions. So when you go to the census, right, there are tens of thousands of reports that you can get. As just a regular citizen, it's amazing the amount of data that you can get, that you can drill down to your community, maybe even to your census tract if that information is available. But these are already pre-generated reports. And then there's, you can go to the American Community Survey, and you can get the 5-year, the 3-year, the 1-year, et cetera, et cetera. You look at the reports, and you basically put in information, and you, boom, get this very nice set. It's not a graph. You have to do that yourself, but it's a very nice Excel spreadsheet. So, do you conceive, and I feel where the expense comes in before I ask the question. I hear that, I feel that. Do you conceive that we would have that for this dashboard, so that there would be a set of reports that principals would be able to get, that counselors would be able to get, because I can see principals and counselors maybe wanting something else, that school psychologists would be able to get, that the people who work like OTs and PTs and speech pathologists may be able to get, that elementary teachers may want that are different than what high school teachers may want. Do you conceive that we will actually have a pre-selected list of reports like you see on the census?
We actually, through Infinite Campus and ad hoc reports, as well as reports that our programmers write, have a variety right now of just what you're talking about. And in fact, you know how, as you're describing the census, those are preset types of forms that are just populated with data. The beauty of having programmers here is that we can customize and we can say, hey, on top of all this, we want this other field added in too. Okay, so that still does work, and that's what Ed has been, working under as a principal to get information. This is just going to be more real time. So all that is a possibility now, and it will continue to be a possibility.
So yeah, the goal is to be able to get the information by stakeholder or employee group that is essential for their work on behalf of students. We also, on this feature, correct me if I'm wrong, Diane, you can export that data into spreadsheets as well, so that you can email it out, and you can, and I think the big thing is it's real time. Whereas I know we made back in the day, you would write the report, and it would be that one point in time. You'd have to pull it at some point. But a week, and we know in our district, a week later, that data can change. And so this is the opportunity that's before us today. Based upon how that student is enrolled and where they're tracked, their information goes to that particular school, to that user group, and they can pull that and start to use that to make decisions. I think about how we've advanced in our district around multi-level systems of support and intervention, responding to instruction. This provides those staff members that opportunity to drill down at that time. So if we're doing a leadership team meeting in January, it's there versus it's just the information from last semester. It's real time. So
good. Also on this, and I understand, when I read this, I understood that it's a picture for us for illustrative purposes.
Yeah.
But something that jumped out at me that makes me sort of ask a larger question. So when I see up at the top, number of schools, that's fairly quantitative. Number of staff, that's fairly quantitative. Number of students, that's fairly quantitative. Attendance year to date, also quantitative. But then I look at incidence and high risk.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, high risk is a value judgment.
Yeah.
And number of incidents is also a value judgment in many ways. I think we're trying to make some changes, but how much do you see?
Yeah.
More, you know where I'm going.
Yeah. Well, I think it's, the number of high risk, I don't know how they've operationally defined that. I don't know. And I don't believe that we have operationally defined that in our district.
Right.
So I wouldn't forecast that's going to be on an example for us.
But I see that this is a.
Yep.
My question is, though, I can see where you might want to put that on there.
Sure.
One, not necessarily us, but you might want to put something that is much more of a value judgment than an actual quantitative data point.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think the number of incidents is a fair discussion point because, and I would offer that we have work to do around identifying what is referable versus not referable, and how is that documented and logged in the system, and there's a level of calibration across the system to make sure that what's entered in at this school is entered in at this school, is entered in at this school, rows is rows is rows. So there's a process to that. And those are things that I would offer are opportunities for us to come together as an organization and to use that as a discussion point. We are not going to be perfect with that, but if we use that data to learn about the data and to be able to drill deeper, I think that's an improvement opportunity for us. So I guess that's my context for now.
Okay. That's it for me. Anybody else?
Well, if I may piggyback on the one, the high risk one, I'm clouded, but it seems to me you could, everything's by definition.
Yeah.
And you could throw it, if you wanted to know it more in aggregate by a school or district, how, X number of absences or tardies, and not at high school level, being on track credit-wise. I mean, those sort of things you could eventually defined if you wanted to for that particular category.
And DPI does help us out with that, some of those at-risk indicators and, credit deficiency and those sorts of things. So the more we understand what it is that we're trying to describe, absolutely, I think there's possibilities for that.
Yeah, but in some sense, that shouldn't, I don't know, that's a conclusion that you should draw. There shouldn't be a number on a line.
Sure.
That should be, as a result of having definitions, having standards and parameters, and what is at risk in third grade, potentially, is not at risk when you're second semester senior.
Absolutely.
So, that just, like I said, not that I understand that this is an illustration, but that just begs the question, well, how much are we going to rely on something here to tell us what we should know, as opposed to having the information which then informs us and we make a decision about what we should know?
That's a very good point. And I think that is one thing that we've been in this district committed to. At the end of the day, a student is a student, not a number, and we should be able to drill down and have conversations about individual students and making decisions on behalf of them.
Exciting. So let's go. Next steps. What's next for us as a board?
I know that Dr. Langenfeld in her presentation tonight is going to talk about a data retreat, and I think that's a good next step relative to that. I'll just give you a quick update. We have several months planned and prepared around additional learning reports. An opportunity is before us. I'd like to insert summer school is before us. We've learned a lot about our summer school programming. We have the opportunity to give you an overview around what our purpose is for summer school, what are some of the enhancements that we've made over the last several years, and then we also are prepared to give you a brief but significant financial overview as well around summer school as well. So we'd like to do that coming up here in February. We also have a learning topic around SAGE, now referred to as AGR. I think that ties into some of our federal reporting practices in the month of March. And then we still haven't forgot about the other topic, which was our parent engagement, our family engagement presentation. So that one we can work in there as well. And that'll move us right along to where our schools now start to get prepared and get ready to come back with some monitoring reports.
All right.
What does AGR stand for?
Achievement Gap Reduction.
There you go.
I learned that from Andrea Landwehr.
Used to be.
Hey.
It's impressive.
It is impressive.
Anything else?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes my report.
All right. Thank you, Celestine. Next, we'll move to superintendent's update.
Very good. I'm going to start with the monthly update of the calendar, looking already at the month of February, the month of Valentine's Day. We had a great discussion the other day about that. February 1st, teaching and learning work session meeting, and immediately followed by the organizational support work session meeting. So it's an early first work session for February, and that starts at 5:30. And it's right here in this room. Then February 11th, we have the ICSC, the Student Council meeting with the board at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I'm sure Ms. Martinez-Cruz will speak a little more about that. And then February 15th is our regular board meeting again at 5:30. So just a few things on the books moving forward in the month of February, but good things. So that's the calendar.
And then
I have a couple of discussion items, and the first one is to schedule board retreats. You have one, I know, President Warren, and then the data retreat is the other one to schedule.
So if people want to pull out their calendars, and I don't know if we're sticking to Mondays, but February 8th or February 22nd, if we want to stick with Mondays. Why don't we start with the 8th?
I'm good.
Is everybody good with that?
Yeah, either would be fine.
What time?
Is this the data?
No, this would be the board
The
self-evaluation, yeah.
5? Is ours 5:30 better?
When can Andrew start? Do you remember? A little earlier, yeah.
Right.
Do you want to go earlier? Because it's just us,
Sure.
so we're not making staff stay
making
late or
staff
anything.
stay.
Yeah.
4:30?
4:30, why don't we say 4:30?
4:30?
And then Sandy, if you could check
And this
with
is for what
Andrew,
again?
the board self-evaluation. That way we filled out those
Oh,
survey
did you get the
things.
results from
I did,
WSB on that?
So I'll bring
Okay.
that. And then, in fact, I could, anyway. And just check with Andrew if he can come, and then if he needs to switch the time, I think everybody sounds like they're flexible, so. If we need to go a little later, I think 4:30 is the earliest.
So you said February 8th at 4:30?
Yeah.
I am just double checking something. I think that's okay.
Are you good?
Yeah, I think, yeah, go, I'm
Okay.
going to put that 4:30, February 8th, right?
And then, yeah.
Okay.
And then for the data retreat, what timeline, what month are you thinking?
Well, I think as we move forward and do the planning, I don't know if we can get it in as early as the 22nd. I'm seeing nods of
Looking at-
February, that would be that last Monday. It means there's Monday.
The 29th is,
Yeah, we have the
It
29th
doesn't,
too.
it doesn't, oh, do we have the 29th?
Yeah.
This-
We do.
Oh.
That's the bonus of having the first.
Bonus. That's, I
Being our
thought we had
first
the
meeting on
thing
the
so
first.
gotta
early.
fill up all these Mondays.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
so the
it's-
29th would,
It's not your lucky day mark or anything? It's a day that doesn't exist some years. so. We're good? Kim?
is
Yes?
everybody, 29th work for
29th.
Diane?
us?
Okay. All right. Works for you, it works for us.
What time?
The teaching and learning team is saying no. Yes?
they're saying yes.
Oh, okay. I'm watching that.
Is that your sign language back there?
4:30?
4:30?
4:30, yeah.
Wait, board retreat.
29,
And then Sandy will send something out?
Okay.
4:30,
Well,
okay.
but you're just going to send it as a calendar request, right? Okay, so I'll just, that's
Okay.
fine. Then I'll just discard that. And you said February 29th?
At 4:30, yeah.
I didn't know we had that extra one in there.
That extra Monday, what? So wait, we've got the 1st and the 15th, the 8th,
And the
not the
20
22nd.
Right.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
All right.
back to you.
Okay, and the next thing I wanted to talk just briefly about a wonderful celebration I had the opportunity to attend where so many people from the district were well represented. Today is Martin Luther King Day, the celebration of his birthday, the holiday, the national holiday. But on Saturday at the Technical College NWTC, there was a celebration, a community-wide celebration that is hosted each year. And the theme for this year was My Dream for My Community. And board member Mike Blecka was there in attendance along with his wife Marguerite, as well as myself and a number of other folks who were able to present. We had many, many students who were participants and winners in both the essay and poster contest. They identified, and Luis Franco from our Equity Department as a family engagement coordinator was able to award two of our teachers, and their names are not in my head right this moment, but I'll get those to you, identified for supporting the event and ensuring that students had participated in the various opportunities around essays and posters. We had many, many winners in the various events. We had a dancing group from Preble that did a beautiful job as well. And it was just a very wonderful moment and morning of celebration of the richness of the diversity of our community. I was able to share a few words, and in my heart, when I see the collective impact, when we all work together, we can achieve wonderful things, not just for some, but for everyone. And I think that was a common theme with the lawmakers who were present, the community members who were present, and the students as well, that we should dream big for our community. We should dream big for each and every person in our community and celebrate the richness of our diversity as well. So, proud moment for me. Green Bay Public Schools was well represented. And that's that part. I think I have one more action item.
Yes.
A unique item. I'm going to ask, I think, are Kim and Lori coming up?
Tom's actually coming up.
Well, good. Hi, Tom. I've got Kim on my notes here, so. No, he's got it under control.
Lori thinks I can handle it all by myself.
She's a very good judge.
But she's right there.
Yeah. We're just asking you today to approve a resolution giving your support for a submittal of a grant for a Fab Lab at Preble High School. And if you remember from the last meeting, you asked about Makerspace and Fab Lab, and this is what a Fab Lab would be. Is they're going to turn one of the existing computer labs at Preble High School into this space, a maker's space, that have a variety of different tools and instruments in this space that would allow for students to bring things from design into fabrication. A typical item you might see in a Fab Lab would be like a 3D printer. And then as you get to add pieces to your Fab Lab, you might get more sophisticated items, like, for example, maybe a CNC machine, and typically these are smaller desktop items, not like you'd see in a big lab, but a smaller space. And so this grant would be something that we would receive, and we would match district funds with this grant money, potentially over a 3-year period. So.
Yes.
I have a political question.
Go ahead.
So the WEDC is a very troubled organization. And would this be a Trojan horse? I mean, they've had a lot of difficulties. They've actually started with difficulty, and it's been continuing. Not that I think it's a great idea, right? Sounds great. WEDC, I'm having a little problem.
I will admit I don't know what the difficulties are, but I'd be glad to look into it for you and report back.
May I ask as part of your question?
Yeah.
Whether the money will still be there with this organization?
And quite frankly, their issues really have been around their own inability to keep their own books. And to lend, this is a grant, right, but to lend and give money without really having any control over it. Now, that's not, in many ways, that's not our problem, but when our name can get caught up in that, I'm concerned. And it's only $25,000, and it's a great idea, but.
Yeah, the legislature's looking, even the Republicans in the legislature now are starting to admit that this was a terrible idea to get rid of the Department of Commerce. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be something done in the legislature to reconfigure this. I'm not sure what it is, but they have had a terrible track record.
Yes. So I'm not sure.
The only issue we have is there's a deadline for the submission, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't do anything.
What's the deadline?
The end of January.
Oh, it's the end of January.
Yes.
Friday.
Friday.
Oh, it's Friday.
But
Okay.
let me ask this. If the resource doesn't come, right? And I'm not sure if it's the resource not coming and
Yes.
or is it and alignment with the WEDC?
Both.
That's what I'm seeing. Okay, that's what I'm wondering. If we could take that off the table, the conversations I've had with school districts that have Fab Labs, the opportunity for creativity and innovation has been extraordinary. So
Fab Labs are great.
Okay.
Like I said, the idea is great.
Okay.
I'm talking about the source of the money.
So what's your concern politically?
That, like I
the
said,
source of the money?
WEDC has been incapable of monitoring their own funds. And, for good or ill,
There have been private companies that have been netted in their incapacity to bookkeep. And this seems like, I'm not sure if this is a new program or this is an existing program. No, this is a new program, a new grant program. That raises a lot of red flags for us. It's a great idea. We should do the Fab Lab. It raises a lot of problems for me getting involved with an organization, although it's a state organization, it's a public-private partnership that has had a terrible track record and some bad press, very bad, and well-deserved.
Their track record has been such, we'll probably get 50,000 from them. They'll think they gave us 10.
That's...
I didn't hear that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Their track record is such they'll give us 50,000 and think they gave us 10. I guess there have to be some safeguards built in when you're dealing with them, and keep a good paper trail with everything. I would suggest.
That's where I was going to go next. That we need to make sure all of our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted, so that we have our own internal accountability in dealing with them.
I have talked with Andrew about this particular grant, and although I don't know if he's familiar with the organization, but I have faith in Andrew being able to monitor things appropriately.
Well, that's throwing it over.
Poor Andrew.
But
if you just get out from under the bus.
I think, to your point, Celestine, I can certainly understand what you're saying. I've been reading along. I'm looking at the board of directors. I think we can do a little more digging. I see Peter Barker's name on the board of directors. I see Dan Aarons from Aaron's company as well. So there might be some people that if we have further questions about what you're raising, we can get a little more information this week. We have all the way till Friday. But I think it's a good questions, and I think there's my takeaway when I initially saw that was that there was a desire to move forward in a perhaps a little different way than in the past. That was mine. But
I certainly think what Chris says is meaningful. That we just make sure that
absolutely
we're watching
carefully
and read up.
Well, and we're not I think part of the issue is people taking advantage, recipients taking advantage.
I think that's
of
true.
the situation, and
I
think
they also have not done their job in terms of bookkeeping.
Giving loans to businesses and corporations that
Without any review
without any review of whether they created jobs, whether they did anything. Right.
And like I said, Fab Lab is great. Thank you for pursuing the grant. Thank you for going out there and finding money. Just be cautious.
Thank you.
You and Andrew.
And they will not even consider the grant application unless this resolution is passed at the board level.
And I support the resolution, certainly.
So I'll entertain a motion. If we have more discussion, we can do it after that second.
I move that the resolution supporting the Fab Lab grant application and the Fab Lab project for Preble High School to purchase Fab Lab equipment as presented be approved.
I'll second that.
Is there there's more discussion? Go ahead, Chris.
Yes, you don't have to answer it now, but I'm curious why this didn't come up when we met last time. It's coming here now. It didn't just evolve this last week. So
It has been a pretty quick process, we will say. Lori, we've been working on it for a few weeks.
Correct. Initially, we were under the impression that we could have a letter of support from the board or from the superintendent, which is very different than a resolution. So as we dug deeper into the specifics of the grant, we discovered last week that we needed a resolution. So I was working on developing that resolution in a manner that we could bring to the board. So I apologize. We probably, had we known that this was an absolute of the grant, we would have brought it sooner, but we just found out this week that it had to be a resolution.
Thank you.
Okay. Does the resolution need to be read into the record, or is it enough to? Melissa?
According to the grant application, it needs to be approved by the board and in your minutes so that they have some way of tracking that it was approved by the board, but I don't know.
I don't think it has to be read.
Okay,
Just attach it.
then we'll just attach it to our minutes and we'll be good.
All right, anything else? Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Lawrence?
Aye.
Jeffries?
Aye.
Blackout?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Carried 6-0. Thank you
Thank you.
for your work on that. Let's see, next we have our Intercity Student Council report.
Good evening. It is a new year, and the end of the first semester is this week. Awesome things are always going on throughout the district. Grace and I will be sharing good news that ICSC shared what has been going on throughout our district and the schools last Sunday. For West, or really the 3 high schools that are in the United Wrestling team, they won an 8-team tournament. And one of our ICSC members was also recognized by the Nicolay Bank Spotlight this week, Caleb Jeffries. So if you haven't read the article on him, make sure to read it.
It's a good picture, too.
Yeah.
That's a good picture.
Kirk Robb, a Green Bay West senior, he has incurable brain cancer and was honored this week as the first graduate of the class of 2016 in the special graduation ceremony. So that's exciting. And Sting Cancer donated items to St. Vincent Hospital. Moving on to East, we had our annual Silent Night game against West. So that went really successful. West beat us at the wing contest, which was okay. But the East Show Choir competed in Colby. 2 East High School students, Leah Gates and Diana Martinez Cruz, passed the Microsoft Office Specialist Certification exam in the Business Ed department. Leah passed the Excel 2013, and Diana passed the exam for Word 2013. Everett Lay, he was named today, I believe, Press Gazette Player of the Week for the boys basketball team. He scored 15 points to help out the team, upset Appleton Xavier, and 21 points in a win over New London. And now, Grace, my vice president, will help me out with the rest.
Hi, I'm Grace Sinclair. I'm a sophomore at Preble High School, and I'm the vice president of Intercity Student Council. And I'll share some good news about Southwest first. So they started their musical, well, they're doing their musical January 29th, 30th, and February 4th, 5th, and 6th. All the shows are at 7 p.m., and they're doing Grease this year. And they also had a very successful DECA competition. And for Preble, we are getting ready for our snowball, which is going to be January 30th this year. And our academic decathlon team placed second at the regional competition on Friday. And we recorded our highest regional point total in school history. 13 people are going to state in DECA for both teams and individually. They participate in state at Lake Geneva, March 7th through 10th. We have our next blood drive on February 11th, which are normally very successful at our school. Our show choir has their first competition this upcoming weekend at Milton. And the boys' GBU swim team is doing very well, and John Gans broke the 500 freestyle record. Our math team is going to their 3rd meet on the 25th, and they've been doing really well so far, so we're excited for that. And our one-act play had their first performance, which went very well, and it's a feminist take on Shakespeare, and it's called Not Such Stuff.
And for John Dewey Academy of Learning, all seniors have post-graduation plans. Students are in a group-based project learning on issues for the Village of Bellevue that they're trying to help resolve. They're coming up to the Board of Bellevue on the end of February, I believe. The school dance is coming up for John Dewey, and overall that's what we came up with at our ICSE meeting at Preble. We are excited. We also came up with the topics that we're going to bring up to the board on February 11th, and we are excited to bring those. We still have another meeting at the end of this month where we're going to be discussing what we're finalizing to bring up to the board. But for us, we are throughout the high schools, finals are this week, so we're excited for that, and that concludes our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Both smiling.
I know, smiling. Think about finals.
Okay, that's fine.
You must be doing
Nothing to
something
be
right.
concerned about.
No, I'm fine.
Knock them right out of the park.
Okay.
If I may.
Go
Unless somebody
ahead.
else will have-
No, go ahead. Is it about this?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you familiar with the academic decathlon by any chance? The parameters of that? That's okay, few people are. I just want to point out, it's not easy to compete at the state level or be at the top. The competition is fairly intense. The, for lack of a better term, the finals, it's almost like going to a basketball game in terms of many schools bring a lot of students there to cheer on their students. But beyond that, there are many schools in the state who dedicate a class period to working on the academic decathlon. So what that means, and unless you do that, it's pretty hard to be at that top level. So there should be no disappointment by any of our schools if they don't reach that, because it's one could argue not a level playing field with how different schools are able to prepare for it. But it is a worthwhile competition.
And I would offer, I think, East and Southwest and Preble, all three high schools qualified for state in academic decathlon this year.
Quite a few areas.
Yeah.
Quite a few areas covered.
Very extensive.
That concludes your report? All right, thanks, Lily.
If
Go ahead, Katie.
I could move to reorder the agenda slightly so that the two action items on the teaching and learning work session, on King and on John Dewey, be heard next.
Second.
Any conversation? Nope. Sandy?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Jeffries?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Barth?
Aye.
All right, carried 6-0.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I'll turn over the teaching and learning report to Katie Maloney.
Thank you. I move that the proposal for King Elementary School Children's Center for Engineering as presented be approved.
Second.
And we did receive an updated budget in our packet.
Yep.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Yes.
Is there any discussion? Nope. All right. Sandy?
Jeffries?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Barth?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
Thank you. And I move that the renewal of the contract for an additional 5 years, July 1, 2016 to June 30, 2021, between the Green Bay Area Public School District and the John Dewey Academy of Learning Charter School as presented be approved.
Second.
And then I think, you want to come up, Tom? Yeah.
Yeah, I've invited Molly O'Neill from the John Dewey Academy and the company's board president, Michelle Alstein, here tonight. You had a couple questions last time. We put some of those things in your green letter this week, and they're here to answer any additional questions you might have.
That green letter is very effective.
Well, thank you for being board
Is there
president.
anything, since you weren't here last week, Molly, is there anything you'd like to update us on? And, I mean, Tom did a good job.
No.
All right.
I'm not sure if I should have something, but no,
No,
I
no,
mean,
I just didn't want
I
you
feel
to
like
have
I've answered
prepared
the
something
question,
and not be
so-
given a chance to.
Yeah, and we
speak.
appreciated getting the names of the board members.
Yes,
That was
that was
very
helpful.
helpful and very diverse group of community members.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
They did have a larger group here before too, but I think they'll had to leave for some different things, so.
Yeah, someone pinched her baby, so she could leave.
I do appreciate your patience.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy? Oh, did you have something, Chris? I saw your hand
Thank
go
you.
up.
No.
Okay, go ahead, Sandy.
Warren?
Aye.
Blackout?
Aye.
Jeffries?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Barth?
Aye.
Carried 6-0. 5 more years.
There you go.
Yeah, please.
And now the rest of the motions can wait because I won't be holding anyone else hostage.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for
You said
reordering that.
the rest of the Martians. I'm like, what are you talking about? All right, the rest of the motions. All right, we will return back to our agenda, which, next we have legislative liaison report. I'll turn that over to.
Thank you, Brenda. And I guess I wish our community members who spoke to us were still here, and it seems that we're talking about WSB resolutions and legislative issues. I want to address a couple things that fall into the parameters of my report. First of all, we're going to be talking about resolutions that go to the Delegate Assembly on Wednesday, but I want to go back 4 years ago, and this is the resolution book. Resolutions that are adopted by the Delegate Assembly guide our lobbyists when they go over to the Capitol and the Governor's office. And so the resolutions in here speak for all 435 public school districts in Wisconsin. About 4 years ago, I noticed that there was only one paragraph in the resolutions book dealing with private school aids. Basically said, WSB opposes the use of public money for private education. I felt at the time that we needed more detail in that, so I worked with WSB staff. We developed a very extensive resolution with about 8 or 10 different parts that this board adopted 4 years ago, and it was passed overwhelmingly by the Delegate Assembly. And I won't read the whole thing, but I want to read the introduction and then one part. It says, the WSB opposes the use of federal and state tax monies to subsidize non-public schools or non-public students' parents through a voucher system, scholarship tax credit, tuition tax credits, or deduction plan or other similar arrangements. And I just want to read one of the subsets of that. It says, arguments that private voucher schools provide similar education at lower costs than public schools are fundamentally flawed in that they ignore that private voucher schools educate dramatically fewer students with disabilities, have dramatically more latitude to select, reject, or expel students, do not provide pupil transportation, and are not required to adhere to rigorous teacher or administrator licensure qualification standards, all of which reduce the cost to private voucher schools and shift those costs to public schools and the taxpayers who support them. So that is a resolution that came from this board. Since that time, and I would be more than willing to meet with any parents who think that this board hasn't taken any positions. Last year as WSB president, my address to more than 2,000 school board members and administrators centered on defending public schools against the voucher folks and others who would question public education. This board there have been dozens of instances in which this board has passed resolutions, has sent letters, has met with legislators, and has testified at several public hearings defending public schools against the attacks by the voucher folks and others. So that, and later on, after we do with the resolutions, we're going to be talking about some legislation, some of which we've taken strong positions on and written letters, and another one that I will be recommending tonight. So this board has been, and I've been told this by people in Madison, I think this board has been more active in the legislative arena than I think any other school board in this state. So with that, I'll go on to the agenda tonight, but I just wanted to say that in the context of what I'm going to be reporting on tonight. And again, I would be more than willing, Michelle, or if you or Lori wanted to set up a meeting with some of these folks, we can certainly put together an agenda and give them copies of everything that this board has done in the last 4 to 5 to 6 years.
I think we can certainly do that. I think when we're not in an environment where there's a lot of public testimony going on is a very different environment. So much of what happens with the Board of Education and my work is, those conversations with legislators and smaller meetings and smaller groups talking about issues and building relationships, because one of the things that's very, very, very important is to really understand each other's perspectives. And we may not always agree with our legislators, but we have to have the opportunity to be heard. And so one of the pieces I think that's been very important in this quieter time, has been the opportunity to engage in conversations with legislators to really start to talk about the issues that we really are seeing and experiencing and working collectively to problem solve them together. I think we would all agree that far too much of where the state of Wisconsin has gone and the country is divided. And right now we're looking for solutions that really unify the work that we're trying to do for each and every child who attends public education in the great state of Wisconsin. So that's my takeaway. A lot of work that people may not see is currently going on and has been done. So.
All right, and before I
Did you,
go, Chris?
Just one comment. What you both said is absolutely 100% correct. It does somewhat beg the question is, if we have people like the lady that spoke, and I think she's passionate about wanting to help the schools, I don't know what we do to get the message out to folks like that she had to be here making the comments she had, which were certainly not in tune, not knowledgeable of everything that's being done. So I mean, I'm not asking for an answer, but something I guess we have to think about. I mean, we've discussed so much at this table. There have been articles in the paper, I think even letters to the editor and whatnot. And I don't know what else you do beyond that so people like that can see what's being done. You know, I'm not sure. I'm just
encouraged by the fact that apparently there is a new parent community group, which is certainly positive, and I guess it comes down to communications. I guess we always think that we communicate, but if people aren't hearing us, then we need to do a better job of communicating. I mean, I just think it comes down to that, because in these issues involving public education, we need everybody on board. And if there's a segment of the community that doesn't think we're doing enough, then we need to work with them. So I think it's incumbent on us, obviously, to do a better job of communicating what we're doing, because apparently some people don't know what we've been doing. So I think we just need to reinvigorate our efforts, and I know we've done a lot. Lori does a lot, sending out, newsletters and legislative updates and that, but I think we need to maybe look at what we're doing. If there are people who we aren't reaching, we need to do more.
Are we on topic now?
Well, not really, because we're talking about legislation, and I think that fits into my legislative report. But I'll go in, just a little background for the public's viewpoint is that the delegate assembly is Wednesday at the state convention. Chris is our delegate. The resolutions that we are considering come from school board members all around the state. They're reviewed and recommended by the Policy and Resolutions Committee, which consists of 30 school board members around the state, plus the 4 members of the WASB Executive Committee. And every year for the last 4 or 5 years, we've parceled them out to staff to give us their thoughts on the recommendation on the resolutions, and I think that helps our delegate and also me, who I also get a vote, understand the impact on Green Bay. So with that, I'll invite staff to the table, and we'll go through the resolutions. They'll be on the screen.
I think, Mike, as we go for the resolutions, if you would just give a brief, as part of the delegate assembly and part of the original group that actually walked through these resolutions, I think it would be very nice if you could frame them a little bit too. I think one of the things when we read them, we may not have interpreted them the same way that was intended when the original resolutions were approved to be part of the packet for this session. So I think that might be helpful as well.
Okay, the first resolution, 1601, revenue limit flexibility and time to adjust to state law changes. The rationale for that is Policy and Resolutions Committee advanced that to let WSB members decide whether to support allowing school districts to increase their revenue limit by an amount necessary to make changes directed by new provisions in state law, and to support urging state lawmakers to provide for delayed effective implementation dates to give school districts additional time to adjust to and implement changes directed by new provisions. So with that, the first one, Andy, you had...
I believe we should support it.
Okay.
Rationale, or comfortable with that?
I think...
It's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think...
Bottom line, this is saying fund the new mandates that you...
Right, it's that they keep...
Raise the real limit to fund them.
And, you know, over the last couple of months, how many mandates, new mandates that we dealt with is that school districts need not only time, but the money to react and to implement them.
Without being able to acquire resources for it.
The second resolution, and I think Andy misinterpreted this resolution.
Yes and no. Okay. How did you interpret it?
Well, this is our resolution, actually.
Okay.
This is the one that we had submitted.
Oh. Might I explain just a little bit? I interpreted it as if we had a building to sell and we were going to be selling it to a private school organization, that it would be a referendum.
No, but that's part of it. What it says is WSB supports legislation to require that a school district's voters must give their approval at a referendum vote before the operation, management, and/or control of any district school may be transferred to any entity other than by the locally elected school board of the district.
Okay.
So the school board still has the first authority if we want to transfer a property.
Okay.
But other than that, and this came out of the state budget with the Milwaukee Opportunity School Partnership Program, which gave the county executive in Milwaukee County the authority to appoint an alternate administrator, which he has done, and then that person would have the authority to take over operation of a number of Milwaukee public schools without any approval by the locally elected Milwaukee School Board. And so it's in reaction to that if you're going to do that, and there is a provision in the state budget that conceivably could expand this program to school districts with more than 15,000 students, which obviously would be Green Bay. This is an attempt to inform our lobbyists to saying, wait a minute, we don't want you to do this. So that's the intent of the resolution, is that the school board still has the authority. If we want to sell a vacant or underused building, we can still do that. But if you're going to go and expand the Milwaukee program to the Green Bay schools, the people in our community who paid for that school building and paid for the staff, you cannot turn that over to a private operator without the people who paid for that voting in a referendum. That's the intent of the resolution.
I would be supportive of that.
All right.
And as I read what you wrote for your rationale, that's exactly what you said, that you give the board the authority.
Yeah, and the resolution does do that. I see your concern, but it does address that.
Yeah, it's very well thought out.
But we don't want to go, because this is one of the resolutions that we had submitted to WSB.
The transfer of ownership of property is secondary to the issue of transferring authority to operate the school, taking away the authority of the school board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two words. Flint, Michigan. So, this is a la, city, administrator taking over and essentially poisoning the town.
And if that comes up, Chris, you may want to get up and address that issue on our behalf, the fact that this came out of the Milwaukee situation, and there are two members of the MPS board on policy and resolutions, and I had some extensive conversations with them at our policy and resolutions committee.
Okay, good.
All right. The next resolution is also our resolution, private schools' eligibility to participate in a statewide voucher program. There have been many instances in MPS over the last 20 years these fly-by-night operators setting up a school, taking hundreds of thousands, in some cases millions of dollars, public money, no accountability. They close up shop, and all of a sudden you have hundreds of kids who all of a sudden the public schools have to absorb them again. This is at least an attempt to say that a school can't take voucher money unless it's been in existence for at least 5 years. So there would be some stability there. Obviously, the overall resolution and position of WASB is that none of the money should go to, but if it's going to, this would try to provide some stability. And I think staff is supporting that.
That's correct.
Maintenance of effort. The fourth one. This would allow us to support a change in federal law to allow a local school district to reduce spending attributable to maintenance of effort without penalty when it reduces its spending on employment-related benefits provided to school personnel, so long as the district maintains the same level of services as students with disabilities.
Supportive of that.
Yes.
Is maintenance of effort right now measured strictly on how many dollars are being spent?
Dollar per student.
Dollar per student.
Dollar per
I
student.
equate it to a high jump. Very few times do you get to bring that bar down. It continues to escalate higher and higher.
Okay,
That is accurate.
Resolution 1605, creation of a statutory mechanism to allow districts to set aside funds in trust for the purchase of long-term fixed assets. This would allow WSB members to decide whether to support legislation to allow school districts to place into trust for future use a portion of their general funds. Funds placed in such trust would be considered shared costs for state aid purposes in the year they are placed in trust and would be used for the future purchase of long-term fixed assets as described in the resolution. It's understood that such a trust would be set up pursuant to a board resolution, and purchases made with funds from such a trust would be made according to a long-range plan adopted by the board.
I'd be supportive of this. Just a little bit of additional background. Several years ago, there's an initial fund created, and you got to remember there's two different types of school districts in Wisconsin. Let's call them property rich and property poor. One fund was created that actually benefited more property rich school districts. A second that was where you'd be able to deposit funds into a trust, and it would, on a state aid basis, benefit them. There was then shortly thereafter a fund, same exact intent, but created for the property poorer school districts. So those two funds occurred. They're created, so this already exists for the acquisition of larger purchases, buildings and whatnot.
You're talking about a sinking fund.
Exactly. Yep. This has now gone to the extent of taking it to another further step and saying stuff that you depreciate. Still big things, but not super big things. So you're not going to acquire land or large remodeling projects that was originally designed. These are still there, but I would be in supportive of this. I believe they need to create two funds for equitable purposes between the two have and have-nots property value-wise. That way everybody could participate, everybody could benefit in a similar fashion of the two current funds, trust funds that exist.
Okay.
For the sinking funds.
All right, next resolution, increase special education categorical aid reimbursement to 33%. Policy and Resolutions Committee advanced that to allow membership and opportunity. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Let it decide whether they support increasing the level of prior year eligible costs reimbursed by special education categorical aids to 33% and maintaining the reimbursement of not less than 33% each year. Currently, special ed categorical aid reimbursements reimburses between 26 and 27% of prior year eligible costs.
I would be in support of this. My fear is where the funds would be coming from. So are we gonna rob Paul to pay Peter? I don't know. It's additional money. The only fluctuations here are, is there one district with a higher special ed rate than another district? Are there gonna be winners and losers? I don't know. I'm in support of this, but I'm fearful of where the money would come from.
Okay, the next resolution, restore 2/3 state funding and increase primary guaranteed value per member. Advances to allow an opportunity to vote on whether to support restoring a state commitment to providing 2/3 state funding of statewide school costs each year, as well as changes to the general equalized aid formula that would restore state aid to a number of school districts that have fallen out of the general equalization aid formula because their property value per student is too high and thus no longer receive such aid.
Be in support of this, but similar to Resolution 1606, I'd be curious where the funding would come from. We do need to be mindful that the latter part of the resolution increase the primary guarantee for value per member. Again, those are very high value, property value per student districts, and they're talking about giving them potentially additional funds. So how this all plays out, I don't know. Generally speaking, I would be supportive of it.
There are a number of smaller school districts, including some in Door County, that are really hurting because of high property values. They get no state aid.
Sure.
And obviously what I think the state needs is a total revamping of the school aid formula. But absent that, I think okay, sparsity aid. Policy resolution to advance this, allow members to decide whether to support making changes to the sparsity aid program to allow all districts with fewer than 5 students per square mile to receive per pupil sparsity aid payments, excuse me, in such a manner the lower enrollment district will receive greater amounts per pupil than higher enrollment district. And this obviously is doesn't affect us. There's a lot of small rural school districts, primarily northwestern Wisconsin, with large geographic areas with very few students. And again, those districts are really hurting.
They are. For Green Bay, I oppose it. Generally speaking, I think an ethical thing would be to allow it. There's an existing sparsity aid at 10 students per square mile. It's not very much money, and it's for districts that are smaller than 1,000 students. I don't know if this is going to be additional aid or if they're talking about changing that 10 students per square mile, but this is 5 students, even more sparse than the initial aid that's been going for a few years. It's probably the right thing to do, financially speaking, for our district. It's not something that I would be in support of.
The only position that I usually take the position is if a resolution doesn't affect us but doesn't hurt us, that I would support it. Because a lot of times we ask the rural districts to support us on positions involving vouchers or things that affect large urbans. And that, so if we can support them on something that really doesn't harm us but helps them, I usually support those kind of resolutions.
In our conversation, if I could, in our conversation, what we talked about, and maybe we're misunderstanding this, is that if there are additional monies, there's a pot of money at the state level that we understand. And if there are additional monies then going for sparsity aid, and we keep adding and adding to the rurals, does that in fact then take away from other students in other school districts who don't I can't think.
Sparsity.
Yeah, they don't have the sparsity, that don't qualify for sparsity aid. And that would be our wonderment of that is as we continue to support our friends, are we really helping, or are we saying that's okay, and pretty soon we've set ourselves up in a place where I don't know. I don't know what that costs, so it's really hard for me. So that was our discussion, is does it really take away from our students?
I think some of what maybe, the way we vote will be guided by the discussion on the floor.
Yeah.
I think if we're kind of up in the air on it, I think, just be guided by the the conversations. If it looks like, it's not going to hurt our district, it's going to help some of our neighbors, I would be inclined to support it.
Yeah, and I think that's what Andy said, is that, sometimes it's a minimal impact, and you do it for the good of us all. And that's, I think, what I'm hearing you say.
Interestingly, I did have a question mark by this one. I couldn't
well.
figure out here, but the devil's in the detail, and you really don't know that. with
Right,
this
what
resolution,
we're really talking about.
what it really be.
What the dollars would be. Okay.
The next sliding
I have
scale.
discretion, and that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
At least
I think with all of these, I think what we try to give our delegates is how the impact here, but then I think the delegates still have, because there may well be amendments to many of these,
That
and then I
change the
think the
whole-
delegates are going to have to decide on the floor,
Yeah, absolutely.
how to vote. Sliding scale funding formula adjustment, whether to support legislation to implement a sliding scale formula factor multiplier in revenue limit calculations in order to increase the applicable revenue limit authority of districts. Sliding scale formula factor multiplier would give greater weight to students beneath certain enrollment numbers levels than it would students above those levels.
I believe I might have been interpreting this just a little bit differently. I did speak with Dan Rossmiller on a couple of the topics. I was under the impression that it would have been in relation to size of districts rather than the levels of the students that we're addressing. Did you have thoughts on this one?
No, I think that, again, it's like the previous one.
Yeah.
It really impacts us.
Yeah.
So the clarification is a kindergartner versus urban rural? Is that just the?
I believe so, yeah. And I think some of the language on the floor as you're having the discussion with your colleagues is going to determine where we might land with this, so.
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this is saying to me. When I read this, I can't figure out what it is.
I'm with you on this one, Brenda. It's difficult.
Is it to increase the membership? What's the membership?
There must be, and again, I'd ask, there must be some kind of factors, whether it's demographic, something in there that would end up just a ninth grader not just being a 1.0 FTE.
They might be
It would be a free introduced student that equals a 1.2, or an ELL student that equals a 1.1. Something in there that ends up allowing for additional revenues to be generated.
So who sets the sliding scale?
That's yet to be determined.
So this is, we're telling our lobbyists to if this were to pass, we were telling our lobbyists to lobby the legislators to implement a sliding scale, which is basically the equity and funding.
That's equity and funding.
It would be
movement.
legislation.
But is it, but because it says, would give greater weight to students beneath certain enrollment membership
Yeah, I don't know
numbers
what that
levels.
means.
Well,
So, I mean, if you have,
That's-
so if you have a district that has, so let's say there's 3,000 students and you only have 40 ELL students, does this mean that you would get a greater multiplier because you have such a small number of students who are ELL as opposed to a district that may have 3,000 students but 700 ELL students? That's what that speaks to, just below a certain level.
Is it large district, small district, and you get more points if you're small and get more money? We wouldn't be in favor of that one. If it's a multiplier based on student, like a categorical aid, we'd be interested.
Or poverty.
Huh?
Yeah,
Or
but if
poverty.
you've got.
But that's a small district too, I think.
Well, it would affect any student that
Greater weight to
qualifies.
students beneath certain enrollment numbers. That doesn't speak to.
Oh, this is straight to numbers for small.
Well, if it's straight to numbers, then that's why I think you wrote oppose, isn't that?
I believe I'd get clarification on it.
Yeah.
I really would. That's why I interpreted it as district size or organizational size, was that line number 9.
Yeah.
Okay, next one, student assessments. Allow members to decide whether to support statewide implementation of a uniform, i.e. single common statewide assessment for all publicly funded students that would be in place without modification for a period of years sufficient to effectively evaluate student achievement. All students in the state who receive public funding would take this assessment whether they attend a public school, charter school, or private voucher school. And I think this gets at every year we have a different assessment. And I think there should be some sort of a period of time where you have the same assessment.
It also gets at requiring private schools,
Right.
voucher
Right.
schools,
Private
to
schools
take
with
the
the
same
same
assessment.
assessment.
Well, but I like it, but the thing that I think speaks to that point is it says all publicly funded students.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Not schools, right?
Publicly funded.
Students. So that speaks to, it's, Wisconsin Forward Exam Day. Everyone's taking it. If you've got a public school, publicly funded, then you're taking it, period.
And
End
the
discussion.
key is single, because the state budget has asked the Department of Public Instruction to seek a waiver from the federal government, Melissa, I think, to allow up to 3 to 5 different assessments. And the person at the Value Added Institute at UW-Madison said, you can't do that. That somehow they would be tasked with taking all the different assessments and somehow developing a formula where they'd be compared. And Bradley Carl, who was head of the institute, said, I could do that, but it's not a legitimate comparison. So that's why single is so important. That you can't just take whatever assessment you feel like and then say it's the same as the Forward Wisconsin exam. So that's what this gets at.
You took the words right out of our mouth.
Yeah.
I think the piece around the ensuring the single assessment, but then also the accountability around publicly funded schools is the key piece.
Students, publicly
Publicly
funded
funded
students.
students.
Funded students.
Yep.
Thank you.
State mandated graduation requirements allow members to decide whether to support A, local school board control for determining high school graduation standards and the assessments that will be used to issue a high school diploma, and B, position that if the state requires assessments for graduation, those state required assessments should be fully funded by the state.
We support that resolution. I think as we've learned, state mandates that are not fully funded or even for that matter partially funded become a difficult part for us as a large organization to handle. So we would be in support of moving that resolution forward.
Okay, use of electronic communication to notify parents of a child's truancy. Allow members to decide whether to support legislation to allow schools to notify a parent or guardian of their child's truancy that does not qualify as habitual truancy using electronic communication mediums instead of current notification requirements.
We would support that. We believe we need to be able to use multiple options when communicating with our parents and our families. We wouldn't want that to be the only way to communicate, but I think a variety of communication methods is.
And I think this resolution made it clear because obviously there are some of our families that can't receive electronic communication, so we would still notify them in the traditional way.
Right.
So what
But
is,
this is an option.
so what does the current legislation say? What are we changing? What's currently,
By
does it
written
currently
letter.
say we have to use old-fashioned technology to notify parents? That's in legislation?
The legislation used to read that it had to be by certified mail, and that was changed in the last
Just last
legislative
year.
cycle to say just by U.S. mail.
Oh, okay.
So that's the current method.
So
This
it's, so, okay. All right. But it's, is that for habitual truancy or any kind of truancy?
No, I think this reads.
No, I mean the current legislation. Is that, does that, the certified mail and then down to mail requirement, is that for all truancy or just habitual truancy?
I believe it states for all truancy-related correspondence.
correspondence,
It needs
okay.
to be in writing. This is giving us permission, unless it's habitual, to use an electronic.
Are there different ways?
A different way.
Oh, okay,
It's the step before.
got it, okay.
Which, through some community surveys that we had done through the equity department.
It was
just-
actually favorable for certain
Yes,
families.
so we wouldn't want it to be limited. I think what we want it to do is allow us to communicate with them in the manner they believe is in their best interest. Whether it's, I get the habitual part, because once it's habitual, they want it
documented.
Well documented, yeah.
Well documented.
Yeah, okay.
A technical question, and it's not addressed here, of course, but could that be set up where you send me something and you know that I've opened it?
Sure.
Which would be, some regards, better than the mail.
I believe it
That's a
can. I
side
think it
issue,
would,
right?
yeah, I'd have to know more
Yeah, I mean,
about
you
our
could
system.
set that, okay.
Right.
I don't know if our system allows it, but I do know that there are systems that do.
That you can
Yeah,
notice of receipt.
Yeah, it,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
it says,
see that they-
it'll say that
And see if
the
they
sender
read it.
has requested a receipt for this,
Yeah,
for an email.
I've seen that before.
But text message, no. Text messages, I don't know, have that capability. I've never seen that.
That you read it?
Well, that the
That it's been
sender would
opened.
know that the text
Has been
message has
opened.
been read.
Yeah, I think you can. My
Some Apple
sister
may
tells me, what?
Apple products.
Yeah, you can do that, yeah.
I think that would be beneficial. Like, right now, we don't know whether they receive a letter.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
either.
You know, we,
Yes,
so we
certified
send
letter.
it, but we don't always know they received it unless we send it certified mail. So I would hope through some of our modern technology, I do worry like Google, I don't, I know now, I used to be able to tell with our system when someone opened my email, but I don't know that now. So I think we'd have to have some conversation about that.
Yeah, I've never seen that. Define truancy for me again?
10, well, the parent is allowed to excuse their child for 10 days. And then after that, we go in increments of
Isn't it 5 or more without an acceptable
five or
excuse?
more, and then,
Parts.
yeah.
Part or all of 5?
Part of all of 5.
5 days
So
without
that's
an
where I'm
acceptable
going.
excuse.
So because it's periods that we count for attendance, I'm imagining in middle school too, but high school. And so 10 excused absences, more than 10 excused absences, but that's for all or part of a day, right? So after that, then the student would be habitually truant, even if it's just like the same, like one or two periods.
Not necessarily.
Well, strictly speaking,
I'm
that
asking,
you
not
could,
telling,
but
sorry.
I mean, because you could look
Yeah.
at 2 days of unexcused absence, and that's 14 periods, and so you're, but we've never done it that way. We've always looked at full days. Where that, at least as I recall, where the partial day would come in is when you would start looking at chronic truancy, and you would include that towards habitual truancy, or chronic tardiness, rather, and looking at that and saying that, yeah, well, that is part of the day, and we are going to look at that in terms of determining truancy.
And generally, if a student is excused by parent 10 or more days, what administration would do is have a meeting with the parent around what is going on with the student and make a determination. Sometimes parents just simply haven't gotten doctor's excuse where a student has been in medical provider's care, and so then it becomes about accurate, recording of the attendance. Not just go right away to unexcused absences because they used up the 10 excused days.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next one, elimination, reduction of newspaper notice publishing requirements would allow school district to publish statutorily required notices electronically on the school's website and its other social media instead of in newspapers.
We would support this resolution. By way of example, we have previously discussed at the board table the recent educational options required posting in the newspaper. Ellen and Lori were just done working on that, and that particular notice, one notice of many that we're required to do, will cost the district over $300 to make that posting in the newspaper pursuant to the state law.
Right, and that's not even the work to create the document that didn't exist.
Right, that's just the cost to the
Right.
newspaper. Between Lori, myself, and Ellen, we spent many, many, many hours, and Dr. Langenfeld spent many, many hours working on that posting.
All right, mental health supports. Allow membership to decide whether to support the provision of state funding adequate to address the shortage of mental health professionals in our state qualified to address the needs of school-age children and young adults, as well as provide adequate professional mental health supports in our schools and communities. This would include permitting schools to enter into partnerships with county and community agencies that are involved with mental health to provide for school-based mental health programs to provide the services as outlined in the resolution.
We would support that. I think our only concern becomes when we look at the comprehensive student screening in every school. I think we would like that to be a local decision, not something dictated through legislation. When you start to screen every child or do a universal screener for mental health, I think there's lots of pieces that go into that decision, and we wouldn't want to be locked into that.
One of the things I think, Michelle, and you and I discussed this, that might address it on the first one, if we would introduce an amendment that said comprehensive student screening tool in every school. So this way it says that almost implies that you have to screen every student, but if we have a tool in the school, and then administration and staff decides who needs to be screened. That address the concern?
No.
No?
Yeah, I don't understand that.
No, yeah, if I could, as we vetted it out a little more, that's why we thought we would like the board to have that decision-making power, because if we choose a tool, then we also have to have resource to be responsive to the tool and a plan in place. I think that was our concern, is that if the school system now becomes a mental health screener, that's okay if we also have the ability to respond. And so that's why we thought we would like to work with the Board of Education and have that discussion first, rather than to have a tool that would be mandated by Madison.
You know, can I just also say, I mean, it starts off by saying, WSB supports provision of state funding adequate to address the shortage of mental health professionals in our state qualified to address the needs of school-age children. So why are we screening kids and making a tool if we already have a shortage? This makes no sense to me. So, and that is an issue here in our community. I can't speak for other communities I don't know about, but so, and I am deeply troubled by the idea that we would, I mean, I think what you said is spot on, by the idea that we would actually have screeners in schools that, you know, to address mental health, and then we have to have something to, you know, address that, people to address that, ways to help students. I don't think we should be doing that at all, in my opinion. I don't think there should be a tool, and nor do I think that we should be screening mental health for students. This seems like
I think there are
a rocky road.
I think there are tools and surveys that we already use that help us guide those red flags. I think our concern is the same. I know one of our team members was asked to serve on a committee who was very interested in developing a screener and then wanting us to use that screener. And I think our concern is, what does that screener look like? We're not mental health providers. And then with the shortage that already exists, what we identify with that tool or that screener, we're going to need to make sure we have the resources to address what comes through that. So I don't think any of us don't believe that we shouldn't be looking for mental health and trying to find those red flags and using whatever we can have at our disposal to make good decisions from an educational perspective. But when you start to do a universal screener around mental health for all students, we get alarmed. So, but I think we have.
Is there a way we can amend this that would make this satisfactory to this board?
Strike out that first one.
Just that first one.
Just strike the first.
I mean, it says And then even professional development for classroom teachers on recognition and appropriate classroom response to support affected students. I'm not even sure what that means either.
To me, that just means that we're working as a district to look at addressing those mental health concerns or the indicators, so trauma-informed care.
For classroom teachers, and so essentially, other than the fact that the classroom teacher would talk to the school counselor and the school psychologist, right? Because classroom teachers, it's one thing for a classroom teacher to be a reporter. Thank you, a mandatory reporter, right? I see something that's a little not so good. I'm going to put it in the hands of the principal. That's one thing. It's another thing to say the recognition and appropriate classroom response. That seems to me out of the bailiwick of a teacher. Don't teachers have enough to do?
I think, to me, that says if I have a student in my classroom and I have concerns, that I am an informed educator who knows what some of those identifiers might be. And if I see those, I'm able to hand that to the place it needs to go.
Then I think that's what it should say.
That's what that says to me.
That's what that says to you?
That is what that says to me.
I like what you said better.
We can reword it.
I share some of those concerns. I mean, as far as the expectations, and then how do you ensure that you're giving adequate training, and then how do you, there was a time when we had to spend a lot of time talking to staff about the fact that you cannot diagnose.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And now we're saying here's an area
exactly.
that, when we were talking about things like attention, well, he's got ADHD. Well, you don't
they
know
would
that. You
know
can't diagnose
that.
Tell the
Right.
So
parent.
now we're suggesting that they're going to diagnose.
Yes.
This is a huge issue. There's no question about that. A huge need. But I'm not comfortable with that. It's, we're writing a check that we can't cash here.
Thank you. Can we reword it? I mean, I don't know how much.
No, we could. Is there? Let me just suggest this, Kim. If you know what administrator is recommending, could you develop a couple of sentences and just send it to Chris? Give it to Chris, and he can introduce it as an amendment.
I think there's a difference between awareness and diagnosis, and I think this probably captures more of what you would lend to be a diagnosis language, and we can try to make sure that we're on the
awareness.
Yep.
Awareness and referral.
Yep.
So then Chris can introduce that as an amendment.
That's perfect. And strike number one, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know about anybody else, but.
I think what we're seeing through a lot of the professional learning we're doing with trauma-informed care, for example,
Surely.
it's really about what are some of those things to look for, and it's not about diagnosing. And if I have it, then what do I do with that? Yeah. So, yeah.
Good.
Okay, now we're down to two here. Transfer of territory from one district to another. Allow members to decide whether to support various changes to statutes governing transfers of territory from one school district to another to broaden the ability of voters in the affected districts to approve or disapprove of such transfers via referendum, and to clarify the standards to be used to determine the asset transfer calculation when territory is transferred. These changes are intended to deter owners from presenting multiple small parcel detachments in an attempt to circumvent a public referendum vote on the transfers. And Katie, you're on the state board.
The Boundary Appeals Board.
Boundary Appeals. This really kind of deals with that, doesn't it?
It does, and I am not.
Is this about, there was an issue in a school district outside of St. Louis where the school district was basically determined to be inadequate. And the students were given the opportunity to go to another district. And there was some shenanigans in the other district in terms of essentially transferring parcels so that they wouldn't no longer qualify to be a receiving district. Is that what this is about?
No, well, I don't know if that's what this is about, but the Boundary Appeals Board actually hears appeals from either individuals or groups of individuals who petition the state to take their property and move it from one district to another district for a variety of reasons. And there are 10 things that we have to consider.
I think this came from a small district in northern Wisconsin, this resolution. There's another related issue that I think we deal with in Racine, where a portion of the district does not have, I think, a school board member living in that portion, and that's the portion of the district that Assembly Speaker Robin Voss lives in, and he is pushing that that portion of the school district be removed from the Racine School District and they form their own school district.
Yep. That's been going on a while.
Yeah. I don't make this stuff up.
Kind of seceded from the union.
For one
You can't make it up.
Adventures in
board member?
gerrymandering.
No, for a lack of board member.
For a lack of
There's
board
no board
member.
member in that area.
Right.
There you go.
One of our more bizarre ones was the superintendent was hired by one district, bought a house, realized after he had closed that the house was not in the district that he was hired from, and so appealed to us too.
You know, I agree, this is kind of muddled, and I think this is one of those where we listen to the discussion on the floor and then decide. It's not real clear to me either.
No, because the process is in
Yeah.
place, and I don't think they're going to, making these changes is going to impact the final decision of the appeals
From the board, from the
from
boundaries
the
committee.
boundary committee.
And then the final one is prevailing wage. Allow a local school board the option to reinstate through the adoption of a local board policy the prevailing wage law applicable to the local school district public works projects. Hot button issue.
Leave it alone. There's no purpose behind having this. In fact, in my opinion, it opens the door back up to additional expenses. Apparently, Dan Ross Miller shared that there's a few districts with strong representation with labor unions in their districts. They have the individual flexibility to do something about it if they wish. Why not leave it at that?
Well, every board can, can't they? Isn't that how the legislation was written?
Yes.
Anything that we bid out, we could ask for the wages, and if
Yeah.
it
Sure.
wasn't enough, we could say throw your people
Put
a
some
few more
more-
bones, and
Put some more money in.
All right, thank you, staff, for taking the time to go through it. I think it's been real helpful, because a lot of times there's unintended consequences of resolutions, and so I think this really helps our delegate or delegates, and then the full board. I think it's important that the full board is supportive of the position we take, so thank you for that. Get into the second stage of my report on legislation. The first one I'm going to deal with, and I'll spend most of the time on this because I think this is a concerning issue. We had some internal discussion on preparing a letter to legislators, but we thought it was best that we discuss it with the board first. My recommendation will be that we develop a letter opposing this legislation. There are two lawmakers that proposed a bill to allow concealed carry permit holders to carry guns on school grounds. Senate President Mary Lazich and Representative Robert Brooks from Saukville say their proposal is intended to make sure weapon permit holders aren't inadvertently committing crimes when they drop their kids off at school. Current gun-free school zones law prohibits a person, including a permit holder, from possessing a firearm in the grounds of a school. Under the proposed bill, a person who has a permit to carry a concealed weapon could possess a firearm in the grounds of a school, but would be prohibited from possessing a firearm in the building on the grounds of a school if instruction is provided to students in the building and if the building has signs posted on all entrances that notify the licensee not to enter or remain in the building while possessing a firearm. Essentially, the bill would open school grounds to concealed weapons carried by permit holders, but would allow a school board to continue to post certain buildings to prohibit permit holders from carrying weapons into those buildings where instruction is conducted, much as they do under current law. Okay, here's something to pay attention to. If passed, the proposal would likely mean school boards could not prevent permit holders from carrying guns at events such as high school football games or at basketball games played in field houses in which student instruction is not provided. So,
You think about track meets, you think about cross-country meets at public parks. I've been talking to people about this one, and the Wisconsin School Safety Coordinators Association has come out totally opposed to it. It's unnecessary. I talked to an AP reporter who told me that now if he's got inside information that they doesn't think that's going anywhere. There was a similar bill 2 years ago that went nowhere.
I'm looking at it right now. I went back because Tom Molitor and I had written a letter. It was Assembly Bill 9 that you're
The concern I have, though, and it was a lead story in the Journal Sentinel last Thursday. There was a follow-up Friday where Assembly Speaker Robin Voss said it wasn't a priority, would not come up.
Yeah, that's it.
The thing to keep, Mary Lazich is president of the Senate. She's the co-author. The president of the Senate has the authority to assign a bill to a committee and schedule a vote. So even if the Assembly doesn't take it up, and I talked to Dan Rossmiller about this, he said, keep an eye on that. He said it's important, I think, to contact senators because it could very well be scheduled in the Senate. And if the Senate votes for it, that may force the Assembly to take it up. So
Let me ask this. As we talk through the bill, I do not recall, and I'm going to look to the Mark Smith and the person who has oversight of buildings. Have we ever received a call from any schools where they've had concerns about a parent walking a child to the door? How would we even know they have a concealed weapon? Even now. You know, if someone is licensed to carry and conceal and they walk their child up to the door of a school, how would we know?
Without somebody telling you, you don't. I mean,
You don't.
There's no
And
way.
so I guess my point is that the concern about, I'm not sure what the issue is and why we need the law.
Anecdotally, and I don't know if you know, if it's more than just an anecdote, but supposedly a parent was carrying a weapon in the school when she dropped her child off at school and was approached by a police officer for something else, I don't know if it's expired tags or what have you, and said, I'm carrying a weapon, concealed weapon, because you're supposed to do that if you're a CCW, that you're supposed to, and then that became the issue. So
we're triple or whatever in a gun-free school.
Right.
Gun-free
zone.
Yeah.
So we're legislating for one situation.
Well, for magical thinking, first of all, because, I'm saying if you are a concealed carry weapons permit holder, allegedly, according to the NRA, you are supposed to be the good girl or good guy with the gun, which means that you're responsible with that gun, which means you don't bring it to school when you're dropping your kids off.
one would hope.
So,
And again, the issue was, this person was being responsible. She did have a permit. She did what she was instructed to do because a police officer approached her, said, I'm carrying a weapon.
Right.
And you're within 1,000 feet of the school.
There was
and they're saying, well, a person is following the law, following good practices, and now they're being punished for that.
Yeah. Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett said this is insane. The Milwaukee Police Chief is against it. Luther Olson, who's chair of the Senate Education Committee, said, I'm not sure we need that. I haven't heard of my constituents ask me to have that. This came from the Vice President of the New Berlin School Board. He said it shouldn't be a felony to drop your kids off if you are one of the 300,000 permit holders in the state. And it was supported by the superintendent of the Whitnall School District.
So the concern is that this could come to, because of procedures and who's co-sponsoring it, this could come to the Senate for a vote.
It could.
Right, but it's got no traction on the other side. according to the speaker.
Yeah, but then, I mean, wouldn't they feel obligated to vote yes?
Decided by the Senate?
Well, it's a
You know,
Cambridge issue.
I think we've been monitoring it, and I think that's something, I think what's interesting about it is I read the paper this weekend. There was an article, and they interviewed parents from our schools. And one parent found it something that they couldn't support, and the other parent thought it was not a big deal. I mean, I shouldn't say not a big deal, but was with the other viewpoint. At least that was my takeaway when I read it. So I think that I go back and say, what is the issue? What would the need be? Because you create something to support a need, and one incident wouldn't tell me that there's a great call or need out there. I think the great concern with the last piece of legislation is if you don't know who has a weapon, even in good situations, you might be jeopardizing children and so forth. I don't know.
Dan Rossmer pointed out that even though Voss said it wasn't a priority of his, he said he would take it to his caucus. So they get in caucus, and his caucus says, hey, we think this is a good idea, then all of a sudden it changes.
Would that be right along the fact that the hunting situation that came along this morning where you can give
There's no minimum age.
Yeah, you can give a
minimum
5-year-old a rifle and they can go deer hunting.
And both the monitor and the child
Can both have
Can have a weapon.
Can both have a weapon. No age restriction on hunting.
Yeah, growing up in a hunting house, this just defies logic.
What I dislike about weapons on school property, at least one thing, maybe more, but we do have parents that come in and are very upset with teachers now and then, for whatever reason, okay? And if it's concealed, I mean, to my hip, I'm upset. I mean, I go like that when I'm arguing with the teacher. That teacher sees that weapon. I mean, that's a major form of intimidation,
Well,
but I'm allowed to have it.
Well, if
with
I'm a
this.
school resource officer and I'm walking the grounds before school and, you see a lump on someone's side, you're going to say, maybe I should go check that out. And I just think, I would think our resource officers wouldn't be in favor of this having more guns on school grounds.
I'm certain they weren't. And to your point, Chris, a year ago this week, there was a school shooting in Milwaukee at Milwaukee Lutheran High School. In the parking lot, actually it was a parent shot a student because the students were arguing during the basketball game. It was brought out into the parking lot. Parent got involved, and and under this provision, it would be perfectly okay for that parent to have had that weapon there.
So are you asking us if we want to make a board statement? Or?
If we want to do similar to what we did with the crime reporting data last month, with the letter that we developed, if we want to ask staff to prepare a letter reflecting board's feelings and send it to our legislators, and then if we send it to all our legislators, I would also send it to Speaker Voss, to Fitzgerald, who's the head of the Senate, and then I would also send it to Luther Olson, who's chair of the Senate Education Committee, who doesn't seem like he's in favor of it. That would be my recommendation.
A technical question. I don't know with the current laws, what age is
Permit
minimum?
holder, 21.
21, okay.
I agree with your recommendation. I agree very strongly about this. We don't need it.
I mean, even if it doesn't come to a vote, I mean, I think we need to be on record against more guns in our school grounds. Like,
I would support that.
football games, track meets, so you can sit in the stands and, get in an argument with the
ref.
parents from another school, a heated game.
For the ref.
Yeah.
For the coach for not playing my kid.
Yeah.
It just, gun culture is crazy to me, but that's.
All right.
All right.
All right,
we-
sounds good.
Yep, I think everybody's in
Let's do it.
agreement to do it.
And then I'll just real quickly, the referendum restrictions bill got a hearing, and I think that's coming up for a vote. We've talked about that. And then also the school crimes, I think, will also be come in. We sent our letter out last time, so those are two others to keep an eye on. So with that, I conclude my report.
All right, thanks, Mike. Are there any district events board members wish to announce? Seeing none, we'll move to, let's see, Katie, you still have a couple.
Yeah, I can conclude
your report.
I would move that the high school mathematics resources as presented be approved.
Second.
We just like to provide a little bit of context and an update from the discussion last time that we had. I'll turn it over to Mike Freeze for that.
Evening, everyone. Thanks again for your consideration of this request and recommendation from the Teaching and Learning Department on behalf of our teachers that participated in the process. Just wanted to kind of also revisit the idea that it's a resource request and some clarification around that the resource is one piece. It's an important piece, but it's just one piece of our overall approach to continuous improvement in the area of mathematics. We recognize that an accessible resource for our students, our staff, our parents is an important piece to help us continue our journey together. We hope that this recommendation does reflect our belief in how our words and actions are reflective of our mission as a district, that we believe that all students can be successful, will be successful, and will graduate from our schools college, career, and community ready. We believe that in the area of mathematics, this includes getting ready for high school and being prepared to take algebra when you enter high school. And we're addressing where our gaps are comprehensively, pre-K-12. We believe that that means being prepared to be successful on what has been called out by our state with regards to student competencies at the junior and senior level, graduating high school with their full 3 math credits, if not many more, in many cases, through our various elective offerings, and certainly being college ready as deemed ready by what is out there for standards and expectations there. So we've articulated also with our staff. I think it's important to point out that this resource is just that also, that it's a resource. It's that our content essential documents, our course essential documents, and our team created assessments are truly the curriculum, and this resource supports our work towards student readiness and student success. And I would also offer that this approach to continuous success in mathematics is reflective of our approach across the board in all content areas pre-K-12, and we hope that this request reflects that consistency in approach these past few years.
Any questions or comments that the board has?
Just a couple of comments. I did have some questions after seeing this, and I want to thank Mike and Mark for meeting with me last week to explain where we're going with things, and I'm very impressed with what I heard about how we are looking at these strictly as resources, that the content essential documents are, that is the curriculum, and that is the direction we're going. That this is not, to use a different kind of language I'm not usually using, this is not a destination, this is a journey, and that the continuous improvement in terms of our math knowledge, our math skills is growing on this. The other thing that came out from our discussion that I think is worth noting is the work that was done by the committees and the oversight from administration was very sensitive to the fact that the teachers have a ton of things on their plate, and we are making big jumps, but not jumps that people can't manage. So I just offer that, and thank you for your work on that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Sandy?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Jeffries? Aye. Blackout?
Aye.
Carried 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I move that the space availability for open enrollment as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Blackout?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Jeffries? Aye. Wagner?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
I move that the rights and responsibilities of divorced/separated parents/guardians and parents/guardians not sharing the same household policy as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Jeffries?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Blackout?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
And that concludes our report.
All right, thank you, Katie. Next, we'll move to the organizational support. That will be facilitated by Chris Wagner.
Thank you. We have the minutes there, but then in terms of action items, the first action item is that the extension of the contract for the 2016-17 and 2017-18 school years for the superintendent of schools and learning as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Blackout?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Jeffries?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
The next recommendation is that the administrators' contracts for the 2016-17 and 2017-18 school years as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Jeffries?
Aye.
Blackout?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
The next recommendation is that the managers, technical/professionals, and executive assistants contracts for the 2016 school year as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy? Oh, did you?
I would
Sorry.
just make a statement. In case someone out there is wondering, with teachers and administrators, by law, they're, after their first year on a rollover contract for 2 years. And other staff are not. That's why you see that there.
Sandy?
Blackout?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Jeffries?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
That the employment of Kinsey Black as an executive assistant to the executive director of special education and pupil services, 12 months at the district office at a salary of $52,384 prorated to $23,372 contingent upon pre-employment requirements effective January 20th, 2016 as presented be approved.
Second.
Sandy?
Jeffries?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Blackout?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
The next recommendation is that the employment of Jacqueline Fisher as manager of custodial services, 12 months at the district office at a salary of $66,625, group 13, 100th percentile, prorated to $29,981 effective January 19th, 2016 as presented be approved.
Second. I thought she had retired.
Several years ago.
Yeah, is she coming, okay, she's coming back?
I don't know whether Mike's here to address that. I know she's been working
Mike is here.
almost full-time for us for quite a while.
Michael.
Mike, you want to address, did you hear the question?
I saw that, I said, gee,
Yes, it's been years though, surprisingly.
She's been filling in for about a year while this position has been vacant. And now what we're going to do is bring on full-time until such case that we redo the position and try to bring somebody on to mentor the position.
Cool. Okay.
Okay.
She's very skilled.
She is. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Sandy?
Jeffries?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Blackout?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Carried 6-0.
That concludes our recommendations.
All right.
I move that the consent items as presented be approved.
Second.
Chris?
I noticed under transfers, social worker at Southwest is, the recommendation is going from a 1.0 to a 0.6, which sort of surprises me. It usually goes the other way. So I don't know whether that's a typo or what the situation is. So in essence, we're saying we don't need that much social work time at Southwest. It's not like somebody from another building will be, we're not robbing from Paul to pay Peter on this one.
I'm not sure how they're going to balance.
I don't think that if someone goes to a .6, it necessarily means that we would still have a 1.0 there. It all depends upon how things are packaged together.
Okay, I understand.
We might bring someone from outside and fill that .4, for example. I don't know the specifics that are.
Yeah, I understand you may not know the specifics right now. I would just be disappointed if we're robbing from Peter to pay Paul because we have an employee that wants to go from full-time to part-time. Any other questions, concerns? Oh, I'm sorry, it's yours.
It's all right. Okay. All right, Sandy?
Jeffries?
Aye.
Dorf?
Aye.
Warren?
Aye.
Wagner?
Aye.
Blackout?
Aye.
Maloney?
Aye. Carried 6-0. And that concludes our regular board meeting. We do have a closed session, so I'll read that motion. Special board meeting closed session has been scheduled for Monday, January 18th, immediately following the adjournment of the regular board meeting pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. And pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851F, considering financial, medical, social, or personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations, to wit, personnel matters. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851G, conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, to wit, potential litigation matters. And pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. More specifically, to wit, negotiation of collective bargaining agreements. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, to wit, employee compensation. And pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. More specifically, to wit, potential contracts. The meeting will begin in open session to consider the appropriate motion for a closed session so provided by law.
So moved.
Second.
Sandy?
Aye.
Aye.
Jeffries? Maloney?
Aye.
Wagner? Warren?
Aye. Carried 6-0. We'll convene across the hall.
What's your tomorrow?